to our May Council meeting. So welcome councillors, welcome staff, members of the public and our Botany RSL Swimming Club. We're very excited to have you here tonight and you have the opportunity to watch democracy in action. So welcome. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone, do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette, including debate on an item will commence only after we have a mover and a seconder for the item other than a mayoral minute. The mover has a right of reply before the motion is put to a vote. On commencement of you speaking on a motion or amendment, please indicate clearly whether you are speaking for or against the motion or amendment. You can speak for a maximum of 5 minutes for or against a motion and similar for an amendment. I remind all present that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. Therefore, all present should ensure that there are no video recordings or photographs taken, the exception being that parents are invited to take photos when their child is being presented with a certificate. That will be fine. I would like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respect to elders past and present. The people of the Eora Nation, their spirits and ancestors will always remain with our waterways and the land, our Mother Earth. I'd also just like to note that National Reconciliation Week takes place from the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. This year's theme for National Reconciliation Week is Be a Voice for Generations. The theme urges all Australians to use their power, their words and their vote to create a better, more just Australia for all of us. National Reconciliation Week is also an opportunity to learn about our shared histories, cultures and achievements, and to explore how each of us can contribute to achieving reconciliation in Australia. Council also notes National Sorry Day, an event held annually in Australia on the 26th of May, commemorating the stolen generations. It is part of the ongoing efforts towards reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Council will also be hosting a community forum at 6 p.m. on the 1st of June for the Voice at the Novotel Brighton Lease. We welcome our community to come along and registrations are essential with information on the website. I would now like to invite Pastor Andrew Harper from Bay City Church, Arncliffe, to open the meeting in prayer. Please be upstanding.
God, we just acknowledge that in your Bible, the Holy Word, in First Book of Timothy, chapter 2, verse 1 to 4, it talks clearly and encourages us all to thank those that are in government, thank those that are in authority and governing positions, and to pray for them. And that's what we do tonight. God, we just pray for our community, God. I pray for its leaders. I pray for our mayor, our council, those that serve this community, God, by taking these positions of authority. And God, we just pray that you would give them wisdom and understanding, God, with every decision that they make. In your holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Pastor Harper, for coming tonight. I'd just like to take a moment to recognise that there are some people that have been lost in the Bayside community in the last month. And So the first one I'd like to just acknowledge is Vale Bruce Sharp and Beverly Scott. So the Bexley community has lost two long-time very active community members in Bruce Sharp and Bev Scott. Bruce Sharp was active in Rotary, also a well-known local artist and a former Olympian representing Australia in the 1956 Olympics. Bev Scott was a former owner of Scott's Pharmacy in Bexley. She was very active in fighting for removing the traffic out of Bexley as a member of ERTAG and one of the community Bexley shopkeepers fighting to establish a bank in Bexley, which was the Bendigo Bank. Our deepest condolences go to the families of both at this time. I might ask Councillor Barlow and perhaps Councillor Saranowski, who knew them well, if they'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. First of all, Bruce Sharp was Olympian, but he was a gymnast. Now, the issue he had was in 1956, there was no, they had to work everything out from a bit of paper. There was no, and he had to build his own parallel bars, his own high and low bars. So it was an amazing feat for him to even, it was the first Australian gymnastics team to compete. And he was, I'll get the right one. But his training, he went around and collected all his own, what do you call it, metal bars, so he could build himself. He's got a video, I've seen the video of him training. I've spoken to the library, and I think they're very interested in collecting it all, getting a copy of everything, because we don't have many Olympians in our area.
That's a good idea.
He's a long-term Bexley resident. He was a Rotarian for 54 years, which is another long-term one, but he was also an artist, and I don't know if anyone remembers, beautiful artist, and he was a photographer. And the team finished 7th in the all-around events, with Bruce's best individual performance in the horse vault finishing equal 28th. But, that was a challenge, horse vault, I remember that. And the only instructions that they had to do all their exercises was in French. And when they got to the Olympics, they actually had the wrong performance. They had to rearrange everything and start again. But they did, it was good. He was selected as a torchbearer in 2000 Olympics. And he captured the essence of the games at that time, including candid photographs of the Australian legend Dawn Fraser and Betty Cuthbert. So they're somewhere in the Olympic area. And his love of art was phenomenal. You could even have a painting in this building from him, I would think. So, and look, it was just lovely. He was 91 when he passed away. So, and I think his children all grew up. I think they went to St George. Former Councillor Anfield taught one of the daughters. So it's just nice to have it acknowledged. And I will contact them to see if the library can make some comment. So.
It's a good idea. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Saranowski.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I'd like to be associated with your kind words and Councillor Barlow. In relation to Bruce Sharp, I worked very closely with him when we had the bicentenary. He was a very good community-spirited person. Loved a joke. That's what I remember of him. But he worked entirely in terms of photos. He's adamant, he photographed everything. And I was saddened to hear of his passing and pass on their condolences to the family. In relation to Beverly Scott, I got to meet Beverly Scott 40 years ago when I first ran for council through the late Ron Rathbone. And she should be commended in terms of, when we look at our city, the only Chamber of Commerce that's actually still running and very active is the Bexley Chamber of Commerce. And she was the president of the Chamber of Commerce for a long time. And Councillor Barlow is right, she was an advocate in terms of the Bexley Shopping Centre and the traffic and the noise. And I was saddened to hear of her passing. It's something that our community is certainly at a loss. We've lost two exceptionally fine our citizens of Bayside. While I'm on my feet, Madam Mayor, I'd like to also acknowledge and Andrew Harper, Council's chaplain, with the sad news that his mother passed away. I was at the funeral, along with Councillor Sidrak. I was so much touched, I came to tears. When Andrew's long extended family, I didn't realise he had so many brothers and sisters and people that lived in New Zealand with his mother. And his mother's attitude was, anyone wants a bed or food can come in and welcome. And the sacrifice that she made with her husband. As I said, I was saddened. I was actually came to tears when I heard the stories that him and Andrew's mother and father virtually sold up and went to Ukraine as volunteers. And the amount of community activities that his mother had achieved. And that's why we have Andrew as a chaplain and runs a beautiful church, and the tremendous support that the Harbours have done to the Bayside City Council. So through you, I acknowledge your mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski, and our condolences, Pastor Harper.
Sorry, I would like to speak about Bev Scott, because I've known her for 20 odd years or more. She was a resident from Kinsale Grove, so she was born in Wollongong but grew up in Bexley, was Ducks of St George Girls High, and then decided to go into pharmacy, bought her pharmacy on Forest Road, moved around the corner to her house in Goblin Street, and she was sort of, I would call her the voice of Bexley. She was so active in anything with the Chamber of Commerce, but fighting to get that M5, and that's why it was the ERTAG, but she was one of the leading voices of it. They got the M5, but it's not working anymore after 20 years or 21 years, courtesy of the Liberal government, but anyway. But she also was another one that harassed everyone because we needed a bank. I think at one stage there was 3 banks in Bexley and then we had none. So the Bendigo banks there, and you had to raise, I think, $1 million. So she was forever chasing everyone. We need some more money. We've got this. We've got to get further. And so she was dedicated to Bexley. That was her life. And living around the corner from where her shop was. So, and she worked there for, I think it was 51 years. It was a long time. But I went to her funeral, and yeah, she used to, when I used to see her, I've got another grandchild. Said her husband, I said, how many have you got? 13. Yeah. How many great-grandchildren? 13 and another one in 2 weeks. So, yeah, so they're just lovely people. She was a lovely person, and she was a credit to Bexley, and she lived and breathed Bexley.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. It's wonderful when we've got people who are so committed in our community. And the final veil tonight is put forward by Judy Finlayson. We also remember Judy Finlayson, who recently passed away at 92 years old. Judy was one of the all-time great fighters for the bushland of the Wallach Creek Valley, dating back to the late 70s. Many members and other walkers in the valley would remember Judy popping out as they passed to tell them of the latest matters and to recruit them as new members. Her efforts on this front continued into her 90s, but she will be remembered by older members for the events she organised for the Society as part of the campaign against the above-ground proposal for the M5 East, for her advocacy for children's activity in the valley, and for her major contributions to the history of the valley and public awareness of it. Our deepest condolences also go to Judy's family. Okay. Now, we have a special presentation for, so it's wonderful to have you join us tonight. We heard about a former Olympian tonight, and I know that we have some future Olympians potentially sitting in this room tonight. So it's wonderful to have you. So these are swimmers from, and recently in the New South Wales RSL State Swimming Championships, which were held at Botany Aquatic Centre on the 11th of March. And Bayside Council were honoured to have a number of swimmers from our LGA and Botany RSL Swimming Club and come home with multiple medals and achievements. So we had 13 amazing representatives compete in a number of relays and strokes across a range of distances that did us all proud. And just want to acknowledge to Councillor Mascot, who is the president of Botany RSL Swimming Club, a very long-term local volunteer who's done an amazing job. So we will recognise all representatives that are here tonight. I will read out all the names first because I know some aren't here, but it's good to get their name on the record, on the recording. So I will read out their names and then I'll call you up one by one after. So you'll come round here for a photo at the front and then there'll be a group photo afterwards here and potentially one outside. All right, so the people are Buddy Rawnsley, Tom Bradstreet, Taya Rawnsley, Ryder Cowling, Ashley Benishk, Jack Benishke, Zach O'Brien, Ivy O'Shea, Bede O'Shea, Lily Bradstreet, Georgia Heaney, Luke White, and Billy Thompson. So on behalf of Council and the Bayside community, we congratulate you. We know a lot of effort goes into swimming and we know a lot of effort from the parents as well with those early morning training sessions and meets. So acknowledge your contributions as well. So I'll come out the front. So first, I'd like to invite Bonnie Rawnsley. Ivy O'Shea. Bede O'Shea. Tom Bradstreet. Lily Bradstreet. Georgia Heaney. Any others? No, I'm missing one. All right, so come over here. You all will get a photo. Any councillors that would like to join in. So there's Mr. at the front.
I'm coming up with this swimmers.
Councillor Anna Marks. Thank you again. Feel free to stay, but don't feel obliged. All right, councillors, this takes us to...
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Oh, I've just put them on your desk. All right, attendance and apologies. So we have an apology for Councillor Fardell. There's no other apologies, and I'm a mover. Moved, Councillor Awada, seconded Councillor Jansen. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Disclosures of interest. So we'll go through the screen. So we'll start with Councillor Naji, please.
Yes, I declare on item 11.3 CFE 23.013 on the basis that I am on the planning panel and I would leave the meeting, and it goes for the same reasons for 11.3 CPE 223.015. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Naji. We can scroll, please. Councillor Saranowski.
Madam Mayor, in terms of 10.3 of the Bayside community grants, it's been recommended that Rockdale London be granted, I think, $1,500. I won't be in the chamber. I do not have any role with the club. I go to their games. My son no longer plays for them, but I won't be. It's a less significant declaration, so I won't be in there. I've been a guest at the games. Big game next Sunday, top of the ladder competition. So if anyone's free to come along, it's an opportunity for Rockdale to become leaders of the state league in New South Wales. They're currently second. They're playing RP at Laycock, and they lost 6-0 about a month ago. In terms of 10.6, I'm declaring a less significant interest that two of the representatives that have been on the committee, one of them is I've known him. He's a member of my large branch of the Australian Labor Party at Brighton Sands, but I won't be in their meeting to discuss this item. In terms of 11.1, I reread the report. Whilst it doesn't speak, it's not specific in terms of clubs. I'm going to declare a less significant. My son plays for Uncle Scott's club now, and I won't be in the chamber just in case later on. I saw the program, I think in September this year, or July, August, September, we're going to come back with the report. So I won't be in the chamber. In terms of 14.1, it's a less significant declaration. 2021, I attended the flag raising ceremony for the Greek Independence Day at the HEPA building at Rockdale. So I'll be in the chamber when this item is discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. We've just had some, if we can just ask councillors to speak into the microphone. I think there's a bit of trouble with it coming through to the live stream. Councillor Souness.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Item 14.1, which is the last item tonight, the confidential item. I've declared this less than significant non-pecuniary interest in the past. I'll be doing that again. I'll be remaining in the chamber for this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. Councillor Wada.
Sorry, yeah, that's previous declaration that I've done. Less than significant non-pecuniary on item 14.1 on the basis that a family member lives in close proximity to the site, but would remain in the chamber for a vote.
Thank you, Councillor Wada. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I'm just declaring a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item 11.5 BTC 23.055 on the basis that as a member of Peaceful Bayside, I've participated in a campaign for the pedestrianisation of Bay Street.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Item CS 23.020, sport field allocations, a less than significant non-pecuniary interest as a precaution on the basis that I recently started a role within Mr. Sport. Notice motion affordable public housing and similar in relation to the Minister for Property, that should be lands and property, that should be. And item 14.1 on the basis that I attended a flag raising event, less than significant non-pecuniary interest, and I'll remain in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Cedrak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Number one, excuse me, is 10.3, the Bayside Community Grants Program. I will declare less than significant non-pecuniary. I will step out of the chamber on that, as well as you can see there, similar to Councillor Saranowski.
Can I just, Councillor Cedrak, what basis we just need for the record in why you're stepping out of that item?
That I have had an affiliation with one of the clubs, so just on perception, I'd rather step out.
Thank you.
As well as 11.1 CS 23.20, same thing, less than significant non-pecuniary. However, I'll leave the chamber on the basis of perception of my affiliation with some of the clubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cedrak. Are there any other declarations? Okay, I might just, in relation to 10.3, the Bayside Community Grants Program, just non-significant, non-pecuniary, just that, you know, I've been to different events that have been hosted by these organisations, but I hold no office bearer positions in any of these organisations, so I'll remain in the chamber. Okay, no other disclosures?
Madam Mayor,
Councillor.
no, it's more a question for you, more than anyone. 14.1, the application, but it is for a club. It's for a registered club. It is not for a community club,
It's not a registered club,
but they're called it that. So,
but it's not currently a registered club.
okay. Well,
Thank you.
they are calling it that though.
But it's not currently a registered club.
Okay, fine.
All right, any other? Okay. That takes us to the minutes of the previous meeting. So minutes from the 25th of April, 2023. There is one amendment there, which is item 11.1 CS 23.012, review of alcohol free zones. Resolution 4 should read Robertson Reserve instead of Robinson Street Park. So it's just a minor detail there. Someone happy to move those minutes? Move Councillor Barlow, seconded Councillor Nargi. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. The minutes of the extraordinary meeting on the 10th of May. So 2 councillors that were present at that extraordinary meeting. Moved Councillor Saranowski, seconded Councillor Morrissey. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. This takes us to Mayoral Minutes. So this Mayoral Minute is based on homelessness, and that council lends its support where it can to initiatives aimed at providing more beds for the homeless, that council continues to take every opportunity to raise awareness to eliminating family and domestic violence. And so according to 2021 census, every night more than 122,000 people in Australia experience homelessness, and domestic violence is one of the leading causes of homelessness in Australia. In many cases, women and children are forced to leave their home to flee an unsafe environment. Bayside Council has a strong position in saying no to all forms of domestic and family violence. Our community walk last year was well supported and created a high level of awareness for opposing all forms of domestic and family violence. Our Bayside Women's Shelter provides refuge for women and children seeking protection and also from homelessness. We also have the provision of affordable housing on Council's agenda, and work on identifying how we can create greater supply is progressing. The Vinnie's organisation has been helping people in need for countless years, and Bayside already supports various activities, and I know some of the councillors here joined me a couple of months ago where we fed night patrol, night patrol at East Lakes. This year, both the General Manager and I will be participating in the CEO Sleep Out on the 22nd of June at the White Bay Cruise Terminal. And so that's, we got our thermals, haven't we, ready? And so for us, it's really important to highlight this, and of course we're raising money. At the moment I'm beating the GM, but she's coming quickly. So we hope between us to raise a minimum of $10,000, which will go to supporting the homeless. So I move that Mayoral Minute be accepted. Is there any speakers? Councillor Wada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for bringing this Mayoral Minute. It just really brings to light, you don't really believe when you read about the statistics and how many sleep at night. And well done to you and the GM for being so brave to be out there on that night. I'll be praying for you to have good weather. So I think when you read, and we definitely need to pass it on, I did pass it on to family and friends, but when you read about last year, single night out with a massive impact in 2022, when you go to your website, you've got 1,949,673 people assisted, which is shy of $2 million at 2 million people. And then you've got 689,819,000 bed nights and 1,590,554 meals. I mean, when you read these sort of numbers, and I hope with your contribution this year with the GM, I think we will beat the record of 2022. So well done to both of you, and it's a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rawada.
Madam Mayor, I actually thought I'd have a beanie for you tonight, but I didn't finish it.
I would be most appreciative of a beanie.
So I thought, and I'll have to make one for the GM.
Yes.
Can we have matching?
Well, I think yours has got to be red.
Oh yeah, Bayside branding.
Oh, anyway, yeah, and it's actually good, and I will be donating because I was told that the extra money that we were given that I had to take, I have to donate to people, so that's part of a good cause. So I'll be using, it's $1,230, but you won't be getting all that because there's other people that are in need.
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. All right. I move that Mayoral Minute. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. This takes us to item 7.2. This is a Mayoral Minute in relation to the New South Wales Bus Industry Task Force and the announcement, as councillors will recall, it was quite devastating for parts of our community when the buses were changed without consultation or removed and privatised, and it's put a really difficult situation on some of our residents, particularly older residents who rely on public transport to get to medical appointments and so on. So this motion moves that Council writes to the New South Wales Premier and New South Wales Minister for Transport to congratulate them on the creation of a task force to improve bus services in New South Wales and offers our support and willingness to contribute. That Council, as a key stakeholder, provides a submission to the task force to advocate for better bus services for our Bayside area. So the reduction of bus services across Bayside was raised in a Mayoral Minute on the 27th of April last year. At the time, we made representations to the then New South Wales Premier and Minister for Transport expressing our concern over the reduction of bus services. A total of 17 bus services to our area were cancelled. The New South Wales Government has now announced the creation of a task force to make recommendations to improve the reliability, quality and effectiveness of bus services across New South Wales. It is expected that an initial report will be prepared within 10 weeks, with a final report to be tabled in May 2024 for consideration by New South Wales Cabinet. Bayside Council congratulates the State Government on taking swift action to review bus services across New South Wales, and we look forward to working with the task force to improve bus services across Bayside. Thank you. Councillor Saranowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to support your Mayoral Minute, and I want to add number 3, with your approval, that we write to our local members of Parliament and thank them for their tireless fighting that they've did for our residents of Bayside. And that's very important, that we're very strong in having advocates for our area, and that's why we have 4 or 5 ministers in the government. But can I say, Madam Mayor and councillors, we all know, whenever I'd go drop my son off to school at Cockrell High School, I'd drive back along Grand Parade. It was absolutely shocking to see people waiting for a bus to go to work. You're right, in terms of elderly people, residents, waiting for a bus. We have been neglected for 12 years. 12 years we've been neglected. The state government should provide police, education, and public transport. My view has always been that we should make public transport more and more attractive for the average person in the street to afford public transport. It's critical. And as I said, it was shocking to see we were picked on. 17 services were taken away from us simply because we are ALP. I was over the moon when I heard Chris Minns and the government announcing this task group, because public transport should always remain, the buses and trains should always remain in public ownership. We need to improve the bus services along our beachfront. It is shocking. For 12 years, we've been neglected. And to solve the issues of cars going up and down the streets on Grand Parade from the yuppies from the Sutherland Shire, buses will be perfect to take away the cars. And if you improve public transport, of course people are going to use, why would you sit in your car along General Holmes Road, Grand Parade, whenever there's an accident, you're waiting there for an hour, and there's a spin-off for the local areas. And that's why, regrettably, for 12 years, councillors, we were neglected. We couldn't even get the Minister for Transport, 2 of them, to come down to even Brighton to see the problems that we've got with Hoons and the traffic on Forest Road and Stony Creek Road. So I congratulate the Premier, who's a local, and I know that all our MPs, as I said before, but this is a chance for us to get public transport what we deserve. It's all we're asking for. public transport like every other suburbs on the North Shore. And I just say, before I conclude, the greatest result on the 25th of March's election was to see booths that traditionally voted Liberal actually voted Labor down in Sans Souci. And that is the reflection of the people of Sans Souci, Monterey, and San was sick and tired of an old government. For 12 years, they were neglected. So I rise to support that. Not being political, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Councillor Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just recall as well that when there was so-called stakeholder or community engagement before the big sell-off, that our staff here at Bayside wrote a very comprehensive and thorough report, well-researched, very, very, very detailed. It was unanimously supported by all councillors of the day, and it was a really great piece of work, which I'm sure was put into the bottom drawer of whoever was making those decisions at that point in time. It made no difference whatsoever, at significant impact to our community, particularly with the interior streets of Botany in Ward 1 in particular. There was a lot of cuts where people now have to walk to main roads to get somewhere. They have to catch 2 buses to go to East Gardens, which is the main shopping centre. We now, from some areas of Botany, you can see the city, but you can't actually get there by bus. There was 2 express buses which ran very efficiently, as well as normal services before these cuts, and everyone was happy. It was efficient. Then it was sold off, and now we get no express buses. 1 bus route from the Banks Meadow end of Botany that stops at Redfern, and then you have to walk about 200 metres to get a train. Alternatively, you can drive to Randwick to get on the light rail, but then there's only 4-hour parking restrictions and there's no bus to go from Botany to the light rail. So it's absolutely despicable, despised. I don't know. It's so bad. And as a user of the public transport, the buses myself, it's longer to go from Botany to Redfern. It takes half the time to go from Redfern to Parramatta. So they can run the trains okay. The trains are working pretty well, if I'm honest. But the buses are just disgusting. And I'm someone who's happy to walk and can commute. But other people who are less mobile, there's a lot of children, there's a lot of school children who get on these buses, a lot of elderly who want to get to places, and they've just been cut. So commend the motion and looking forward to some movement of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. No other speakers. I move the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. This takes us to item 8, which is items by exception. Prior to the public forum, I will now proceed to deal with the remainder of the business on the paper by exception. Councillors, the public forum items that were listed, I'll call out in a moment. Where a division is required for a planning matter, the notices of motion and items where councillors have declared an interest will be dealt with individually. The confidential item will also be dealt with individually, as there are changes to the recommendations as printed in the business paper. Councillors, are there any items? So I'll go through the items, and then if there's any you would like to pull out, please let me know. So at the moment, the items I'm pulling out is 10.3, 10.6, 11.1, number 19, number 20. So number 19 is the notice of motion about the basketball courts. Number 20 is the sport field allocations. 11.3, number 12 is, and number 13 are the 2 planning proposals that require a division, and number 15, which is another planning matter. 11.5, number 55, which is the Bay Street Brighton Les Sands trial road closure. And then the notices of motion and number 14.1. So I'll go around the room if there's any other items that anyone wishes to pull out. Councillor Morrissey. No. Councillor Mascot. Councillor Jansen. Councillor Naji. Councillor Saranowski. Councillor Souness. Now Councillor Werner.
Yes, please. Could we please have 10.1, the dog off-leash exercise areas, and in 11.4, CWA 23.013, please.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wadder. Councillor Barlow. Thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 11.5, the minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee, BTC 23.054 -- exclamation mark.
Is
Albyn
that
Street.
Albyn Street?
That's the one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas. Councillor McDougall.
Item BTC 23.064.
Which one? Oh, matters referred by the chair. Yeah. And Councillor Cedric. Okay, perfect. All right, so all the other items will be dealt with by one resolution. May I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Morrissey, seconded Councillor Muscat. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Okay, number 9, the public forum. There is one member of the public who has applied to speak at the meeting. So just a reminder, 5 minutes, and I invite Garnet Brownbill, interested resident, who is speaking to 11.1 CS 23-020 sport field allocation, speaking for the officer recommendation. So councillors who have declared 11.1. Thank you. Mr. Brownbill.
Madam Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to present and discuss with you my thoughts regarding this matter. It is extremely encouraging to see Bayside Council undertake this initiative and to look to establish a sports field allocation policy. Yes, I am actually going for something for once. Firstly, I wish to commend the council staff and officers who undertook the work in compiling the presentation. It is clearly very detailed and provides an insight into the current issues, proposed solutions and future actions required by council to address the concerns of sporting groups and community members and the allocation of community open space and parkland for active and passive recreation. As detailed in the presentation, there are a vast number of factors involved for council's consideration, and given the numerous issues and further recommendations as provided by Council Officer Ms Main, Manager of Libraries and Lifestyle, it was recommended that council undertake a sports need or recreational need study to further inform council of how best to allocate its resources and to whom. It is hoped the councillors can seek to resolve this undertaking tonight. Given the complexities facing council, it would be clearly evident of council's need to undertake both a sports field allocation policy and a recreational sporting needs study to better inform council and councillors and to provide the best platform by which to make the relevant decisions. Case in point is the recent draft proposal by Bayside Council to provide a 21-year lease to a sporting club, Arncliffe Aurora, who have already been provided substantial funding and grant assistance, synthetic turf field, the sports field lighting, and community grants over the years, totalling in the vicinity of $5 million. Yet, rugby union, cricket, AFL, hockey, Gaelic football and numerous other sports have been provided nowhere near this level of funding or support. There is clearly a perception within the community of favouritism and ongoing concerns with regards to how sporting clubs, particularly soccer, are given access to community land above and beyond that of other sporting groups. This would be clearly evident with regards to the basketball and AFL, with obvious evidence of a lack of facilities available within the LGA. In the case of AFL, one field, and only acceptable for juniors, which means our community members have to leave the LGA to access appropriate facilities. Those were the words of Bobby May. Thus, and again, it would be evident that council needs to undertake a recreational needs assessment so that this situation or situations such as this are addressed and the creation of a mono-sporting culture does not occur in our LGA. Continuing on, and as outlined by Ms Main, council needs to strive to find a balance between active and passive recreation and to ensure that community land does not become overrun by sporting groups. This occurs through the installation of lighting or other facilities geared solely for the needs of sporting bodies. Currently, council seems oblivious to this, and as can be seen through the ongoing development of community land, there is a heavy focus on the provision of sporting facilities at the detriment of passive user groups. Case in point is the synthetic turf upgrade of Gardner Park that has seen a 240% increase in usage hours from 1,053 in 2019 to over 2,518 hours in 2022. This is a substantial increase and is clearly not to the benefit of all community members or the residents wanting access to the park or living next to the park, given the noise, parking, traffic and other impacts associated with such an increase. Lastly, councillors, detailed within the presentation was the understanding of the inappropriate actions of sporting groups profiteering from council, from or through subletting and or the manipulation of the rates of hire to their benefit, clearly in contradiction to their lease, licence or permit agreements provided to them. Council needs to address this immediately, especially in light of the dire financial situation this council finds itself in with regards to its asset renewal and maintenance, and to ensure that ratepayers are not burdened through the apparent illegal activity of sporting user groups. It is hoped that council will act with the impacts of this in mind, or that this behaviour has on ratepayers, and council's ability to fund their assets, and that the enforcement action undertaken by council to recoup or address this matter is substantial. In closing, councillors, it is desired that you take the time to review the recording of the City Services Committee meeting and the subsequent discussions undertaken to inform you of how council can best address the sporting needs of all sporting groups within the LGA, thank you, and ensure that the community's open space and parkland resources are allocated fairly and representative of the recreational needs of the LGA.
Thank you, Mr Brownbill.
Sorry, I had a last sentence. Can I finish off my last sentence?
Sure.
Thank you. To this end, I hope the councillors tonight will resolve that council undertake a sports or recreational needs study, progress with the sports field allocation policy that better informs councillors moving forward and ensures equity for all constituents of the Bayside LGA. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can we please invite the other councillors? Oh no, we've got a recommendation. So the recommendation is that the presentation that was provided at the committee, which is available as part of the minutes, that is noted, and that the information contained within the presentation from a Bayside sports field allocation policy to inform a policy. A mover. Moved Councillor Awada, seconded Councillor Naji. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Oh yeah, we can speak on it. So the mover, Councillor Wada, did you want to say anything as the mover? You reserve your right. And Councillor Werner?
Thank you. Look, I don't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to say thank you to staff for all the hard work that went into that allocation presentation. There was a lot of information there, and just wanted to say well done, excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. Councillor Douglas?
Just to refer to what the resident was talking about, I did raise at that committee the excellent recreational study done at Penrith City, recreational sport and recreational strategy done by Penrith City Council, and we discussed doing a rec study for Bayside, and I did send an email to the GM on the 17th of May, formally requesting that a recreational study be included in this year's operational plan, draft delivery plan, with a view to then informing a whole of LGA sport and recreation study, like the one that Penrith have done.
So have you made a submission to the this year's operational plan budget?
I sent, yes. formally to
Okay,
the
well
general
then
manager.
that will be considered as part of that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. Right of reply, Councillor Wada? No. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare it carried. We invite the councillors back to the chamber, please. First item is reports. 10.1, additional dog off-leash exercise areas. Moved Councillor Morrissey, seconded Councillor Jansen. Would you like to speak? Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Werner?
Yes, I noticed that in the when this came in front of the committee, there was another dog off-leash area, which was in Natai Reserve in Ward 3. And I just, through you, if I can ask the staff what happened to that particular dog off-leash area?
Yeah, I believe the GM emailed a response to you about that. Earlier today? Oh, yeah, yesterday. I saw it. I was copied in. Thank you. Any other?
In the officer's recommendations, just to clarify, it does say council note the report, and then next it says council endorses the proposed location for the enclosed off-leash dog exercise area, but then it lists the four wards. But then next line it says council endorses additional location, and then to the last line, that's going to go on public exhibition. We're not voting to actually implement those locations tonight. If we vote on this, I mean, the staff won't be going ahead and making it an off.
No. So tonight we'll that council endorse the additional locations to go on public exhibition for 28 days, and then number 4 is that a report based on that public consultation then comes back to council post public exhibition.
So the allocation of those different parks is going to be based on what we get back from the.
Correct. So they're the 4. Should, we'll go out for community consultation. Let's say the community put in submissions and they're really against one of those particular parks, then council will have to consider that when it comes back in the with the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I had a couple of questions through you, probably to the General Manager or whoever was looking after this. I did note that 1 or 2, I think, that were recommended, the land was owned by Sydney Water.
Yeah, Roads Reserve. Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask the question about, in the negotiations with Sydney Water, whether or not it would be some sort of casual free range arrangement, or would we be tethered to some sort of lease arrangement.
I'll ask the General Manager to respond.
Through the Mayor, our negotiations with Sydney Water usually sit inside the current lease and the term that we have over the land. So we're not, if we're asking whether or not we can use the land for a particular reason, we are not automatically asking for an extension at the same time. So within the term that currently exists over a particular parcel of Sydney Water land, we will be asking them their permission to use the land for this new activity, which is the dog off leash area. The tenure is a separate negotiation that we have periodically with Sydney Water over various leases that we hold.
Thank you, Councillor. I think, Councillor Hannah, you're barking up the wrong tree.
You're a real wag, Madam Mayor. Gee, you've thrown me off now. Yeah, one thing. Do you think there might be an opportunity to perhaps convince Sydney Water that it would be an opportunity for them to perhaps sponsor these off-leash areas that are on their land? Because I know there is a cost involved with this, and I'm just wondering whether or not perhaps Sydney Water might be prepared to sponsor the cost of maintaining the dog bags and all those sorts of things.
You raise a good point, Councillor Hannah, and just reminded me that the General Manager did go back and look at some of that funding model, and I might ask you to just report on that, please.
Certainly through the chair. So we're quite open to the idea of going and talking to Sydney Water about the possibility of sponsorship. But I did mention to the Mayor that some of the costs that have been provided by staff are at the very highest service level in terms of replacement of dog poo bags, for instance. We know what our neighbouring councils do in terms of supplying those, the timeliness and the supply of those. This was based on a daily replenishment of dog bags, which would seem to be a higher level, a higher standard than would be required in most of those parks. It also, I think, when we looked at the mowing schedule of the dog off leash areas, we tend to think that it's probably a little bit higher standard than we would absolutely provide. So while we'd be happy to go to Sydney Water for sponsorship, the figure is approximately half. We think genuinely the figure for maintenance is about half of what has been initially supplied in the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just sorry, these ideas keep me awake at night. So now's my chance to get them out in the public forum. What I have noticed myself is there seems to be an ever-increasing number of residents who break the law. And these are residents who are, in fact, letting their dogs run free in non-off-leash areas. And some of the residents, not only the dogs, can actually get quite aggressive if they're politely told or advised that it's not an off-leash area. I'm just wondering, as part of looking at this, whether or not we should be running, firstly, a bit more of an education program, and perhaps look at our signage that we've got in our parks, and where we have parks that are not off-leash areas, perhaps we need to think about having signage to say this is not an off-leash dog area. However, here is a map of all the off-leash dog areas in our LGA, and this is the nearest one. Because it seems to me that this running the dogs off-leash is becoming more prevalent. And even though we are doing our best to try and increase the number of off-leash areas, it's likely that could continue. So I'm just thinking whether or not that's worthwhile thinking about. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
thank you, Councillor Hannah. It is a good point because I think there has been more reports of people letting their dogs off leash, and we'll run an education in the e-news, so we can do that as a starting point, and then perhaps as part of maybe when the report comes back. So we can add, can you scroll up a bit, please? Thank you. That we can just say that, council put forward some ideas for an education program for educating residents about keeping their dogs on leads in non-leash free areas. How much? Oh, okay. All right, so we've got an addition there. Councillor Douglas?
I just wanted to ask about the Freighters Avenue, which is in Sans Souci. The Freighters Avenue Reserve hasn't been recommended, but I have had representations from the community that I've sent through previously to council staff requesting whether it could be investigated that the Freighters Avenue beach at Sans Souci could be investigated as an off-leash dog beach. It's a very small, short beach, which is between Rocky Point Road and the Captain Cook Bridge and the St George Sailing Club. It's a small contained beach, which would be quite separate to other children and residents, and it's at a very large distance to the other dog beach that we have down the other end of the ward on Lady Robinson Beach in Ward 5. I just wondered if staff had indeed investigated that, or could that now be investigated?
If you want to say that, I might ask Ms Dawson to comment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, when we introduced the dog off leash beach at Kaima, we undertook extensive examination of all of the opportunities along the foreshore, and the opportunities are guided by the plan of management that exists for all of the foreshore. The area that you're mentioning is not recognised as a potential beach dog off leash area, and so it under the existing plan of management couldn't occur. There is one other beach further in the south that we also looked very closely at, and for a number of reasons, most of which aren't at the top of my mind at the moment, but I could certainly pull out the report and send you some information about it. It wasn't recommended at the time.
Thank you.
Can I just ask who prepares that plan of management, and is it possible to have that reviewed?
Through the chair, council staff, with the support of a range of experts, prepare the plan of management for our parks. It is a very long, involved and detailed process. I think the last time we did Cook Park and went through the approvals process with Crown Land, it was approximately 18 months to 2 years.
Sorry, just one more question. Do we do that plan of management? Does that get reviewed on a semi-regular basis? Will there be other opportunities for input into that?
Through the chair, the plan of management for Cook Park was last done, and I'm just trying to remember, but it was something like 8 years ago, I think, around about that time. I think in our forward planning, we're thinking that we would come back and have a look at that at about the 10-year interval.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No? All right, we've got a recommendation in front of us. So is everyone comfortable? So we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, this takes us to 10.3. This is the Bayside Community Grants Program. If there's any councillors that would like to leave? Okay, moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Nargi. Any speakers? Councillor Jansen.
I just wanted to say that I feel that this is an incredibly important program that helps some of our community not-for-profits and small groups do projects that council can't undertake. And all of these projects are aligned to our community strategic plan and delivery program and operational plan. So I think that it's a really invaluable support to these groups. The presentation night that council organises to present to these groups is also a wonderful networking opportunity for these groups. So I really congratulate the staff on facilitating this program. It looks like there are a lot of nominations for the grants. That's quite a high number, so it took a lot of work to assess those. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Any other speakers? No speakers?
I just had one question about the Pantry for the People winner. I thought the idea of that was that people in the local area donated rather than it needing to be subsidised by $2,000.
It's a combination. So what a donation does, it allows the opportunity to purchase goods at times when the donations may be less, and there's certain periods, so that allows for top-ups when necessary, because it is very well utilised, and the pantry actually expands now. So deliveries are made to the East Lakes community. They're also made to Relove, which is another organisation where homeless and people experiencing domestic family violence go to as well. So that's, yeah. Any other? All right, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Might invite councillors in. I think Councillor Saranowski stays out there. All right, so in relation to this item, there's a few different parts to the item. So the first one is the Civic Risk Mutual. So this is a member representative, so the information's obviously in there. So looking for in a nominee for that one. The second one is because Councillor McDougall has stepped down from the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel, that we will nominate a councillor to undertake that position. We also, the recommendation suggests that currently there are 2 external panels and another councillor, Councillor Nargi, on that panel, and the recommendation is that we extend their representation until the end of the council term. And just to also note that all representatives to the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel will now have to provide a statutory declaration as well. So that's something in probity checks that have come into place recently. So what we'll do, we'll start with the Civic Risk Mutual. I did ask any interest but didn't receive any nominations. Is there anyone that wishes to nominate? So Civic Risk Mutual is obviously our insurer, and there are a number of, all councils that are part of Civic Risk Mutual have a representative, and so they go and discuss like a range of things. So we do have a council officer that sits on it, so it's not, we don't need to have a council representative, but it is an option for any councillor that is interested or wishes to get some additional experience in that area. Councillor Souness, do you accept the nomination? All right. Any other nominations? All right. All those in favour for part 1 that we nominate Councillor Souness, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare that carried. We now go to the council nomination for the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel for the one position that's been vacated. Are there any nominations?
Could I just ask a question, please? I noted in the report that it does recommend regular rotation of the panel members to meetings to reduce the opportunity to improperly influence panel members' councils. Could some of that be unpacked for me a little bit? Are they saying regular rotation of the existing elected officials for that, or are they saying that we make sure that we regularly rotate those that are elected?
Is that in the report?
It is. It's on page 114.
I might ask Mr. Soot to respond.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the requirement now is that if the councillors on the panel, plus it's the representatives chosen from council that are on the panel and won't necessarily be the same
So I just asked that because I do believe that Councillor Naji has been on that panel for last term as well. I just wanted some clarity around that because it sounded to me like we might need to actually reconsider, apologies to you, Councillor Naji, but your position also to comply with these new regulations.
That's not required at this stage, so the requirement is there to be rotated. Have a sufficient chance to use it and then rotate. Probably also noting there aren't as many actors that come up here.
Thank you, Mr. Soot. All right. So do we have any nominations for the Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel? We've got a nomination for Councillor Wada. I accept the nomination. Do you accept the nomination? Are there any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Barlow.
Do you accept the nomination? Okay, so we have, do we have any further?
Sorry, could I please have some clarity on that point, though? I still don't understand. It does sound to me like we should be also voting on Councillor Naji's position tonight. Could it be confirmed how long Councillor Naji has been on that planning panel, please?
So the recommendation is there if you want to, at the moment, we're voting, let's stay with the recommendation, we're voting. If you want to ask for an amendment or then you have that option to do that, but we're just dealing with the recommendation that sits in front of us first. So we have no other nominations. No, so we have 3 nominations. So therefore, we will hold a vote via a show of hands. So you can only vote once. Okay, so I'm going to go in the order that the nominations were put. So all those in favour of Councillor Awada, please put up your hand. 1, 2, 3. That's inappropriate, Councillor Barlow. Please refrain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All those for Councillor Werner, and then all those for Councillor Barlow. Okay. Therefore, I declare Councillor Awada nominated for that panel.
Could I then make it an amendment? I mean, I have asked now a couple of times for some information about how long Councillor Naji has actually been on that panel. Could I have that information provided?
We'll have to take it on notice.
Could I then make an amendment that we also vote on the second position as well at the same time in order to refresh the members, as I believe that that is the proper interpretation of the regulations that we have been provided in the report. And I also think it's important that we get other people to have a chance to do these sorts of committees when we clearly have a lot of demand for this experience from both long-running and newer councillors.
Yeah, can I see who the mover? I can't see who the mover is. Didn't we move? Didn't we?
Sorry. So councillors, you haven't actually moved this item yet. What you've done is vote on the names of those people who will now be included in this motion. So we do need a mover and a seconder for the item.
Moved Councillor Morrissey, seconded Councillor Jansen. Okay, so we have a motion there. Did you wish to make an amendment?
I do wish to make an amendment. If Councillor Morrissey would consider that we also vote on the second position tonight in order to abide by the recommendations in the report.
Councillor Morrissey? Okay, so that amendment's not accepted.
So can I please instead move a foreshadowed motion, please, that we consider also voting on the second position of that panel in order to give other councillors an opportunity to engage with these opportunities. Sorry, just one opportunity is fine.
Okay, we'll just wait for them to. So that's a foreshadowed motion. Thank you. All right, councillors, so we have the original motion and then we have a foreshadowed motion. So we will deal with the original motion first, which is in front of us. So we have a mover and a seconder. Oh, sorry. Second, I need a seconder for the foreshadowed motion. Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Okay, so we have the original motion. Are there any speakers to this motion? No speakers? All right, I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. All right, that takes us, we may have a division. So this is the original motion. Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Mascot, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Naji, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Wada, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, Councillor McDougall, Councillor Sedrat, and I'm for. Thank you. All right, we'll invite Councillor Saranowski back into the chamber, please. All right, we're now up to number 11, which is the minutes and reports of committee. So we've got 11.1, item CS23019. You can pull that up on the screen. That's the progress on notice of motion regarding additional basketball courts. Moved Councillor Sedrak, seconded Councillor Morrissey. Would you like to speak, Councillor Sedrak?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I want to thank all the staff involved in this. There's been a lot of hard work, in particular to the mayor and the general manager, and Councillor Morrissey as well. Just a couple things. As you know, these areas have been calling out for basketball courts for a long time, and the mayor and I checked out some of these sites ourselves, and Shaw Street Reserve in Bexley North was a great location, right near the train station, so we're very much in support of that. And as well as Tonbridge Park, Ramsgate, the original location that was chosen, Bono Park, was quite, had a lot of negative issues in regards to that. Tonbridge Park is on the corner of Shooter Avenue and Ramsgate Road in Ramsgate, opposite all the shops. There's great amenities there. There's a toilet block. There's school. It's a wonderful park to have a 3-point basketball court. So this is going to be a great for something right in the hub of Ramsgate. So that's a great addition. Number 3 is just looking at whether we, in future sites, whether it be Everett Park in Bexley, which is what was recommended. The only issues with that, councillors, is it's right on our border with Georges River. The park is not necessarily a hub, so it could have some, there's pros and cons both ways.
I think you suggested, didn't you, the
Yeah.
removal of Everett Park and the replacement was the Gilchrist Park option?
That's right, sorry. So, and for that reason, because Everett Park and the way it's situated right on Georges River, it's almost on Croydon Road. So for that reason, Gilchrist Park in Bexley, not only, I don't know, I think Councillor Barlow was there, Councillor Savranowski and the Mayor, when we did the tree planting in Bexley North. It's a gorgeous park. There's about 3 sections to it. The northern end is a massive site, would be a great location for a beautiful basketball court. And I think these recommendations going forward is going to really, really uplift the area. And more importantly, it's been recognised by council as well as our staff that the highest locations of youth playing basketball is in these 2 locations. So thank you, and I appreciate the support from staff.
Thank you, Councillor Cedric. Any other speakers? Councillor Barlow.
Just a few comments. Okay, I saw you walking around Gilchrist Park while I was planting my tree for my mothers, my Margaret Barlow and my Margaret Barlow. Nay Rose and Nay Wright, anyway, and both Margarets. But the suggestion that Councillor Cedric has just said is just down the road, you're going to have one in Shaw Street. You're going to have one just up the road, and it's the same argument. You can walk 200 metres and you're in Georges River Council again. So you can't have 2 that close together. It is absolutely ridiculous. Everett Park does have a lot of children in the area. It's becoming quite young. Once again, you've got to look at the flooding, but to put one in Gilchrist Park, one in Bexley North, they're within maybe 200-300 metres together. They're both on Shaw Street, just it comes up a bit. So, and I actually would love to know where it is in Tonbridge Park. I can't find it.
So it's right down the end opposite the hall. So it's where there's currently a couple of cricket nets, and there's also a wall that you can play tennis against.
Yeah, because
so right down the other end.
There's AFL play there, and they've got the. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
There's a bit that dips down just opposite our
okay.
community
But
hall.
you either got to make a decision. I mean, Gilchrist Park, I think you should really for a full court, but then you've got 2 within 200 metres. So I think that is pointless.
I think they attract different things. The smaller one is more just the shooting and that, whereas a big court.
Yeah, the big court attracts
games.
a lot of people because of Hogden Park, where Councillor Cedric said his son had to travel to Georges River to play basketball. That one attracts a lot of people, and the parking there is quite difficult. So you've got, when you're looking at a full court, it's a very different usage than the 3.1.
Very much so.
So I don't even know. I presume you're looking at the middle part of that park. So I believe that you can look at it, but you can't have 2 courts within 200, 300 metres. It's unfair to the rest of the area, the rest of the city. So it's a matter of, yes, great idea because you were there, never maybe been there before. I've been there. Actually, my kids played against that tennis wall when they were little, so
Yeah.
that's 40 years ago. So
Look, I think, you know, fair point. We've been looking at the map, and you know, we'll have the full courts coming out of the Scarborough Park tennis courts. We've got a full court in Borroley Park, at Botany, and then you know Bexley. So it kind of then spaces it out quite fairly across the LG. But yeah, you're right. This is an investigation, so let's look at the funding and move ahead with the other 3-point basketball courts.
yes, I think it has to be looked at first. And I did. Obviously, some ward councillors in Fifth Ward didn't know they're getting a basketball court, a full-size basketball court. I'm glad
Thank you,
to confirm
Councillor
that.
Barlow. Councillor Nargi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I stand to affirm that I just don't talk without great intent. One, in committees and in council meeting, I've always said I'll support any code of sport. And that's why I'm going to support this notice of motion. Also, it just dawned on me that when Councillor Barlow was speaking about, you know, growth of kids and that, the biggest growth in youth is Arncliffe, Torella, Banksia, and that surrounding area. And I think for number 3, it wouldn't be a bad idea to investigate further, and I'll explain why, is Arncliffe Park. Part of the park can be having a basketball maybe a bit to the right further up. Why? It will accommodate for the youth. It will accommodate for the church across the road where they have a lot of youth programs, so they can go and play basketball. It will accommodate to the mosque area, which has a lot of youth. It will accommodate to the wider community, not just for soccer. So this is the intent. I don't know if you would consider it, is to investigate it. In Arncliffe Park, if anyone can imagine Arncliffe Park, you've got a soccer field to the right-hand side. If you're back to the church or to Wollongong Road, it's on the right-hand side, right further back. There used to be some cricket pitches in the past, but no one played cricket there. So the council took them out. Councillor Barlow or Councillor Cenotaphs would know a long time ago. And I think it'll be a great idea to investigate and see with possible funding if we can create a basketball for that area.
Councillor Cedric, you happy to accept that? So if you're okay, Councillor Nargi, we might just word it, investigate, further site investigation funding that council recommend is part. So hang on, that's for a full court, so leave that. And then after court, right, and a 3-point ring, or we can put 3-point ring / full court. So let's look at both. Yep, / full court at Arncliffe Park or surrounding area, just in case with the heritage or something it's not possible. I don't know. All right.
Madam Mayor, I rise to support the notice of motion and just concur what Councillor Nargi has said. At Arncliffe Park, it's a meeting place for the youth, not necessarily for football, but it's a meeting place. And I do recall many years ago, we did look at a half-size basketball court where the play area is on the near the right-hand side, but further, on my left-hand side, near close to Bro Avenue, there's a flat area. But I think we should seriously look at that, because I look at the park at Cogra and Georges River. There's a large amount of Nepalese kids that go there, and it's a meeting point for the Nepalese community, just where Harrow Road and Railway Street is. And as I said, with Arncliffe Park, I should have thought of it before. We should have thought of it before. It's a meeting point for a lot of youth of the area that can see an activity. You know, whether it's a full-size or a half-size court, it has got merit. And then always remember, Madam Mayor, that our Minister for Sport is Mr. Camper. So we should knock on the door of the Chief of Staff and seek funding for all these wonderful projects. So if we can notify the Chief of Staff our priorities to provide this wonderful facility for our residents of Bayside.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Any other speakers? Councillor Douglas.
Can I just reiterate again why I think we need a recreational needs study in Bayside? Because we keep having these conversations about basketball courts and whatnot, and it's very random and ad hoc. And while I think we really actually do need to sit down and have a good look, to get the staff to have a good look at the whole area and plan the needs of our community out with a bit more vigour than just coming up with ideas on the spot. So I really do hope that council staff and council do support a recreational needs study for our community in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Werner?
I just want to support what Councillor Douglas just said.
Just to make a point, we're actually, I granted you the opportunity to say that, but we are dealing with what's in front of us right now. And right now, what we are dealing with is whether we're supporting basketball courts and where.
Yeah.
So if
I'd
you
just like
wish
to say that I am supporting this motion. I think it's a good idea to have the basketball courts, but we're adding things ad hoc to investigate.
No, we are not adding things ad hoc because we've actually gone out and done some research. The staff had. What we're doing is we're suggesting sites where we know the data tells us that there are increasing numbers of youth. The staff look at the census data. They work with the youth, our youth, what do you call them? Youth workers, in order to look at those things. So there is planning that is undertaken, but councillors have the right to make suggestions of alternate options for investigation.
I have seen that study. That was a very comprehensive study that we were shown in the in one of the committees, and I want to commend staff for that study. And yeah, just want to underline the fact that we do need to use that data, but that study was only for basketball. So just to say that we need to include other forms of recreation as well and other forms of sport too.
Thank you. All right, we've got the resolution. Councillor McDougall.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
You're all right.
Just in regards to Tonbridge Reserve, and speaking of additional sports, I just thought it might be worth bringing up that I know that the park is constrained in terms of existing sporting uses and the non-full-size AFL pitch. So just when we're locating the basketball court, if we do that in such a way that it doesn't impact on the ability of that pitch to potentially grow in future. So maybe just in brackets after Ramsgate, comma, with the support of the mover and seconder, we could have brackets subject to it not interfering.
So the staff did look at
Oh, maybe this is already a question that's
right down the end, so opposite the RSL, so
Okay.
away from the
excellent.
main
Then
field.
never mind. All good.
It's mine. It's reserved, Tonbridge Reserve.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion. No other speakers. All right, if all those in favour say aye. Against, declare that carried. Okay, councillors, this takes us to item 11.3, where we have to pull out some planning matters because we need division. So I'll excuse Councillor Nagy and Councillor... Who else? McDougall? No, he stepped down.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
I think you might have to now.
Okay, thank you.
No, we're 11.3. Oh, okay. Yep, that's fine. This is the LEP. You can stay for this one unless you have a... It was just the housekeeping amendments here. So we have a... this went to committee. So this is just minor housekeeping, which we discussed and unpacked at the committee. So we need a division, please. I have a mover. Moved Councillor Morrissey. Seconded Councillor McDougall. and a division. Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Mascot, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Nagy, Councillor Saranowski, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Wada, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, Councillor McDougall, Councillor Cedric, and I'm for. I declare it carried. That takes us to the next item, which is number 13, which is the planning proposal request for Botany Road and Henry Kendall Crescent. Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a mover? Moved. Councillor Morrissey, seconded. Councillor Jansen. Any speakers?
I just want to say that I think there was a report about this item in the Bayside Beacon this week, and a bit of contention over the fact that Bayside Council wasn't approving more affordable homes sooner. But I do think that it's worth pointing out that as councillors, we do often get criticism for high-rise developments in the area. Some of them are deemed inappropriate, and they're not even necessarily things that come before council. So I think it is worth pointing out that the reason why we voted on a delay for this particular site was to make it part of a holistic, a comprehensive planning process, not because we don't support affordable housing. I think we've all talked about our desire to support more affordable housing, but that we want to do that in any planning as best we can in an appropriate and holistic way.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Saranowski.
Madam Mayor, my recollection is, and it's going to be debated later on in the notice of motion, was where this concept of the Department of Housing came to us and they're giving us peppercorn units in the bigger picture. This is a housing commission site, and that's the reason why we deferred it, and I made the comment on it. And the classical example is, look at the one in Eden Street, Princess Highway, where they're building 600 odd units, and out of that, about 130 are going to be public housing. $1 million plus apartments. And the good thing about it, the change in the government, is that they're more sympathetic to public housing or social housing, affordable housing. And it's not a matter of just stamping it and say to the Department of Housing, yep, go ahead, you're going to get your planning proposal. Because at the end of the day, the real benefit is not going to be people on the waiting list for the public housing, which is more than 10 years in a row. And that's why we deferred it, because it simply does not stack up just because it's owned by the Department of Housing, that we're just going to change the zonings or the floor space just for them, when in turn, the real beneficiaries are going to be whoever they do the JV with, and give us a third mate. I can't remember what the number was, and that's why I support the deferment, because they've got to justify. At the end of the day, there is a drastic need for public housing. You just need to go to the local MPs and see the majority of their complaints is the fact that they can't get on the public housing register. It's a long list, and you can't go on the private rental. Yes, you do get subsidies, but the rent has skyrocketed. You can't afford it, and that's why, as I said before, if I was convinced in my mind that there was a community benefit for it, I'd get up here and say, yep, I support it. I honestly can't see a public benefit to the broader community, and when there's a dire need for public housing. We had the thing tonight, the Mayoral Minute, which I supported, the homeless. This is the wrong time to even be looking at upsizing. I think they were going 14 metres from 14 to 28 metres, I can't remember. But there's no real benefit to the community. That's why we're saying defer it. And the other thing I wanted to ask was that I know our local member for that area is very passionate about public housing, that we should really also consult with him and find out what his views are, because eventually it's going to go to the department for sign off. So if you want to add, Councillor Morrissey and Councillor Jensen, if you just want to add that we seek the views of our local members of Parliament in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Councillor Werner.
Thank you. Yeah,
Just one moment, Councillor Saranowski.
Oh, sorry.
Thank
Look, I agree. I think at the moment, the way it stands is there's not a lot of public benefit, but I think there would be a public benefit if 100% of that housing was social and affordable. So can I propose to add to what Councillor Saravinovsky has said and say that we send a letter to the Minister for Housing asking whether instead of only 30% of it being social housing, that 100% should be social housing on that site.
Councillor Werner, we can't do that because we haven't actually supported the development. So we can't write about something that isn't being endorsed by council. So technically it's not approved by us. So we can't write about something that's not approved.
Okay, but we could write that if it was approved, that 100% should be public housing because, I mean, we're seeking the view of our local members of parliament. So we may as well also say that we support more public housing as well instead of most of it being sold off to developers.
Yeah, exactly. So anything like that would be a general letter just around public housing. So because we can't be site specific because that isn't technically on anyone's, it hasn't come to council, so it's not an approved development. It's merely a proposal. And what we're looking at is, regardless, we're looking at the site from Gardeners Road all the way to Mascot Shops, and that master plan could potentially determine more affordable or social housing opportunities across, particularly with amalgamations of sites, potentially, depending on what falls out of that master plan. So I think we're just not there yet. But we can write if the mover, it's up to the mover what they accept.
Just on this particular one, what's before us, just to be clear, and I completely understand, Councillor Werner, what you're saying. What's before us is a joint venture between a property developer and the government. And we're not supporting that because of overdevelopment and not enough social housing within that. So that's the motion before us. So, and that's, I think, Councillor Saravinovsky say, well, let's get the local members' view. And then Councillor Sandlands, Minister of Housing, seeking for housing. Yeah, that's high level, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not discounting what you're saying in this one, but before us is basically a property developer working with the government to make a lot of money and overdevelop a site.
Can I just all make the comment that Eden Street was a really bad example of what the Housing Commission, or what they chose to do. It's 784 units. I think they've got an extra 40 social housing on it. That was a company that has done this with the Land and Housing Corporation a number of times. So I feel the government's got to change. Maybe we'll look at it further now, but at the moment it's actually all into the benefit of the developer. It's not for the benefit of anybody else except their pockets. So we have to get something involved, and I've realised now exactly where it is, opposite Memorial Park. So it is a tired area, but you've got to have something that's better for the community, not better for the developer and the state government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I agree. And so what we could do is word that to say that council is not in favour of the current model of redevelopment, which is the one that was at Eden Street Arncliffe, in which and this was actually confirmed on the day by the planner that was speaking to us, that it's 30% public or 30% social.
Councillor Werner, we're going away from the intent of this motion. This motion is purely focused on the matter before us. So can, you know,
Yeah, but the matter before us is exactly
But
an
you
example
generali-
of that we don't want.
you're generalizing here, and this is specifically about one site. So if, you know, any correspondence with the minister then needs to take a holistic approach about council's position. It can't be off the back of a motion that's looking at one site and whether we're going to endorse a DA, planning proposal for that site or not. So it's not the right place for it. Can I suggest that you take it to your motion, which is later in the paper?
You can also go in the other one as well.
I think just for clarity and again with respect, yeah, we need to keep it to this particular site. We can't write to the minister and say, oh, this site in Mascot and we're seeking more housing. It's not related to the matter before us. So keep 3 because that's related to the matter, but we'll take out 4.
Okay. We have, so remove 4, please. And then we need to take a division, please. It's a planning matter. Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Muscat, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Saranoski, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, Councillor McDougall, Councillor Sedrak. I'm for. Declare that carried. Thank you. It now takes us to item 015, which is the planning proposal request, 200 Coward Street. Moved Councillor Morrissey, seconded Councillor Jansen. All right, we have, are there any speakers? No speakers. All right, we'll take a division, please. Councillor Muscat, Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Muscat, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Saranoski, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, Councillor McDougall, Councillor Sedrak. I'm for. I declare that carried. Thank you. That takes us now to 11.4, the minutes of the City Works and Assets Committee meeting on the 10th of May. We'll just invite the councillors back, please. All right, we're on 11.4, councillors. Number 13, disposal of asset to Hollingshed Street, Mascot. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Saranoski, seconded Councillor Jansen. You pulled this item?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say that before we sell council assets, I think it would be good to get much more detail about other options of what we can do, because there are a number of not-for-profits, for example, youth, and for drug and alcohol and so on, that need to be accommodated within Bayside. And I think it would have been really great to get more options as to what we can do with that property before selling it. So I just wanted to say that I can't support this this proposal because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Werner. Any other speakers? No, we've got a motion before us. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, 11.5. Do you need one? 11.5, minutes of the Bayside Traffic Committee meeting on the 10th of May. So BTC 23.054, 27 Albyn Street, Bexley. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Barlow, seconded Councillor Hannah. I think, who pulled this item out? Councillor Hannah.
Councillor Barlow, as the mover, wish to speak first? Or? I don't mind. Okay. I just wanted to make these comments. I've had a number of representations about this site and about the works that have been carried out in Albyn Street, and there's been quite a significant delay in getting this work zone up before council. But in the interim, there's been ongoing breaches of the parking along there, absolutely ongoing. And not only that, it extends well beyond the 21.5 metre work zone that this applicant's now seeking. It in fact extends right along the next property. Now, I think on occasions they've also been requested to remove from the roadway their large barricades that are filled with water, and also their witches' hats. They seem extremely reluctant to do that, and when I walk past the site at night and at all times of the day, it's barricaded off in such a manner that no one else can park there. And despite the fact that it's a half-hour restricted parking zone all along this site and next door, and in fact the builders or the developers even taken up the whole site next door with a very, very heavy vehicle that seems to be parked there consistently. This was also the site when it was being demolished where they went through the wall of the Bendigo Bank, and it could have in fact resulted in very serious injury or death, because I'm told that one of the bricks or brickwork landed extremely close to one of the tellers. So I just wanted to raise this because it seems that to some extent we seem to have lost a bit of control over what's going on some of these building sites. And this proposed work zone is good, but, you know, I would really hope that council officers really concentrate on this site and make sure that these builders in particular stick to the legality of the work zone that they're being given and don't take anything more than that. And when the work zone hours are over, that area becomes available for residents to park in. Because at the present moment, by reason of the way they've run their operations, they have reserved 21.5 plus approximately another 13 metres of public roadway for their own personal construction use. And residents are contacting me about this and telling me that it's not fair. So this is good, but I just think that now that this is going to be approved, I think we've got to make sure that they stick within this 21.5 metres and make sure that they don't go beyond what they're allowed to do. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
So really it's a compliance matter, isn't it? So that's something maybe Ms Dawson, you can just note in relation to keeping an eye on this site and with regular checks as to the creeping of their bollards. Okay.
I think it was, sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say to you, Madam Mayor, that you enabled me to chair this meeting for the Traffic Committee, and I did think it was a very complicated set of restrictions and regulations that the proposed works have to abide by. So I did make a suggestion and requested that the council and officers investigate a process for notifying surrounding residents when approving this work zone to ensure the residents are aware of the road rules related to the work zones so that they could adequately report on breaches, because I think sometimes when there's very complicated work zones, it's difficult to know what is actually allowed and what isn't. So I did make that representation on behalf of the residents to try and enable them to, you know, keep an eye out and police this work zone as well.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Barlow?
Well, it's just, I don't think we can do it, but until, the bit that got me was the fact that until they apply, they have to apply for it. And I put a request in before Councillor Hannah, and it had to go to the traffic committee, then it had to come here, so it doesn't start till tomorrow maybe, or the next day. So I don't know whether something can be representation to the minister or to the department about making it's got to be differently, because they've got away with having free work zone. It's a lot of money. That's why they didn't want it. They actually put one application that was too short, so then they put another one in that was the correct length, or so they said. But whether there's some way, I just assumed that you applied for it, and it was the day you applied, but it's got to come here. So it's been at least a month's delay, I think, before we can even target it. But then I was speaking to the director of City Futures, and there was one where they had their own signs, put them up, and then used it for free, and then took off. So I feel there's a loophole somewhere where they're misusing it to their own advantage.
Or really, they should be pre-planning if they need to extend a work zone, that the paperwork should be in well before to allow for the council process to,
Yes, I know, and
to
that's
be
what I mean.
undertaken. But if it's an ongoing work zone, I mean, and they've used it, in between that gap, then that still warrants us charging them for the use of the public road.
But we can't charge them till it's approved here, is that correct?
Mr. Barber?
Till the sign goes
I think
up.
that would be the case, yeah, because we charge, once the approval is issued.
Once you approve. So there's this...
If there's no work zone approved, they could be issued with infringements if they break
Well,
the
I know
rules,
we're
but-
doing well with that one because they're quite disruptive, but I just feel there seems to be that very long where no one's getting the money, but they're using the site.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Barlow. Any other speakers? No, put the motion. All in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. This is item 55, the Bay Street Brighton Le Sands trial closures. Are you staying in the chamber? All right, can I have a mover? Moved. Councillor Jansen, seconded. Councillor Werner.
Just a question, Madam Mayor, if I could.
Yeah.
Now that the Greek Festival has been canned or put on the back burner, the trial, the street road closure from Friday the 2nd of June to the 12th of June, weekend, who's going to fund that?
I might ask the General Manager to respond.
Through the Mayor, as in the first round of the trial, Council funded each of the weekend closures. But having said that, we were able to negotiate a discounted rate with Transport for New South Wales to bring the cost right down. So the businesses obviously participated. I think the Novotel sponsored one of the activities, the paint and sip, and Council funded a small amount each weekend towards the traffic management plan, our staff bringing in the bollards, the bump in, bump out side of it. So we'll be doing exactly the same this time.
The reason I asked them is the previous one, in my opinion, was actually a flop because there's no attraction of anyone going down to Brighton. When the Greek Festival was going past Park, that weekend, there was very few people in Bay Street, Brighton. When we need to seriously look at the first one we did was because there was activities happening. There was stand, band, special chairs with the kids can play. The first one's a success because there was an attraction for people in Brighton to come down and have a look. The second one, in my opinion, was a flop because all it was we irritated the residents around his surrounding streets of more cars coming into their street, like Moat Avenue, Besting Street, all around there. For this to be a success, in my opinion, Madam Mayor, is that we've got to have some kind of, not just face painting, we've got to have other activities there to attract, for people to meet and greet and extend. I assume we're going to allow the restaurateurs and the food people to extend the footpath to make it an attraction.
Yes.
Because otherwise this will be an absolute flop because all we're getting is the same people coming to Brighton, and I was there on every day that we had the second one, the numbers weren't there. Some of the shopkeepers towards the Grand Parade said, it's like a balloon. We all expected it to be, magic, and it just fizzled out because there was no attractions. What I actually liked was the buntiers, the young girl playing the guitar. I actually enjoyed it. The busker. I actually enjoyed watching her, and she was telling me what she's tried to do in life. There was a lady from, I'm sure she was from Brighton. She actually picked up the shells in Brighton and coloured them in. They're rather expensive for me. I couldn't afford it. But I think if we're going to seriously do this and fund it, is to make sure that there's an attraction. Maybe go to the community organisations, the folklore groups from the ethnic groups, and say, do you want to stand? Do you want to perform? Because the second time, from memory, we only had, I think, 2 stalls. That was it. And I stand to be corrected on it that I could see. And we should make sure that there's no food outlets allowed to sell any form of food, because they're in competition with the shopkeepers, because outside the area. Because councillors, I can tell you this, in Brighton, from La Piazza upwards are surviving. Everyone else from La Piazza down is struggling. There are more and more shops vacant now than ever before in Brighton. The chicken shop lasted 1 month. I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but that's been shut after 1 month. No, I'm not sure about that, but seriously, the economy is slowly, we're going, in my opinion, seriously, we're going quickly into a recession. So the shopkeepers were looking forward to the Greek festival. That's put on hold, whatever's going to happen. The second round, this one we're going to do in June, doesn't give us much time, but we've got to inject some life back into the crown of the jewel for us, and that's Bay Street. Now, we just got to have what I'm leading to is we've got to have a central attraction for people, a meeting point to come there. So if we can take that on board, then it'll be a success on it. So that's my input.
Thank you, Councillor Staranovsky. And I know that the team have been working with the restaurants or the food outlets and encouraging them to sort of come out. So I encourage all councillors to try and get down there and support one of the local businesses for dinner or lunch as well. And I think there's some activities arranged, like chalk art and paint and chalk art and some modest activities.
I was going to ask Councillor Staranovsky, how much did you tip the busker? Anyway,
no cash.
We've got to be empty wallet. We've got to be a little bit more sophisticated with our signage, though. I remember going the first time, going along the Grand Parade. We had a construction symbol, a guy with a shovel, and then no right turn. So we've got to be a bit more sophisticated in sending out our messages to people that we've got a festival there or we've got something there, rather than second-hand thoughts, because that's the only sign we have. And I believe there's a question I noticed in terms of cost through you, Madam Chair, to the General Manager. We haven't seen that yet, so I would imagine that'll come soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, because the Greek festival has been cancelled, do we need to amend these minutes? Because at the moment it looks like the closure is only on 2 weekends separate to the Greek festival, but in fact I believe from the advertising from the council that the closure is actually on 3 weekends, also spanning the 26th of May to the 28th of May. So do we need to amend?
Yeah, we can.
11.5?
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll just amend that one to include the additional weekend, which is no, that's just that the traffic committee note the proposed 2 weekend trial of temporary. So wouldn't it be a 3 weekend? It's a separate document, separate process. Okay, it's a separate traffic management plan. So no, that's fine. It'll just be, even though the proposed Greek festival is no longer going ahead, it still stands that the road closure. Okay, that's fine. All right, no further discussion. Councillor Cedric.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I too, like councillors, I've been to pretty much every night. Can I ask a few questions first before I speak? Number one, from the previous 3 weekend closures, what feedback have we been given, and how have we acted on that in these 3 weekends?
Feedback? Councillors, as you'll recall through the chair, we did agree that at the end of the second round of the trial, we would give you a full report back on how that was progressing. I know I'm a broken record, but I have to say, this is not 3 more weekends of events. This is an anti-hooning measure in Brighton. And if you want it to be ongoing weekend event, then you're going to need to allocate a lot more budget than what we have, a lot more budget. The other thing is it's very hard to attract people, particularly markets, for instance, when you don't have regularity, when you don't have longevity and you don't have tenure. So the trial, we do have some information that has been placed on the portal, I think, councillors. So you can read what's on the portal that shows you some people loved the closure and thought that the peace that and quiet that was achieved was a good thing. The businesses, it's very mixed as to whether they felt that they got any more custom or not out of it. As you'd imagine, there are some people who didn't like the rerouting of the traffic, particularly down Moat Avenue. And there were some early reports that the hooning had been moved into Princess Street on the first weekend particularly, not so much on the second and third weekend. I'd have to say it's very inconclusive. The 3-weekend trial has led to some really polarised views and opinions about whether or not it's something that should be continued or not. And we hope that with these next 3 weekends, we'll get a firmer picture as to whether it is worth pursuing longer term.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just finish. Okay. Thank you, GM. Look, I respect what council's doing. I really do. A lot of councillors here, I know that this has been a dream for a lot of us. This has been spoken about for at least a couple decades, I would say. And we had a real good opportunity to tackle this. We had a real good opportunity to tackle this through this anti-hooning concept. And I know, and I've spoken to many directors about this, it's not a festival, it's about anti-hooning. And I respect that, and I really do. I think though, from what I'm gathering and what information I've got, and look, some residents are against this, there's no doubt. It does bring a lot of attention to Brighton. However, the common consensus that we saw, there were some incidences over the last closures. There always will be, especially at Princess Street, an altercation here and there. However, the kind of consensus that we saw was it's empty, it's boring, and is that it? That was kind of the 3 things that I got. And I'm not putting a negative spin on this. What I'm trying to say is, I think, and I would have loved this, and I don't know if it's too late, but if it's possible, if we really want to give this a shot, and I know that we've spoken about this for many decades now, then I think we need to get a little bit serious in what we're achieving down there. Hooning is one thing, and stopping the hoons down there is one thing, but having an empty street where it looks like it's a ghost town just does not work. And we did that in summer. Going into June now, I am very, very, very worried. I took myself 2 buses of kids down there in the first time, and that was a lot of the feedback they got. I think rather than being modest, we need to be more aggressive in what we're going to offer and how we're going to engage the shopkeepers and get people on those streets. Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, stopping hooning is one thing, but if people don't see people, then the whole thing falls apart. Because the way that this is going to succeed is to stop a negative, which is the hooning that's been going on for a long time, and it has improved, by the way. So a lot of the measures have worked, whether it be down far south or all the way to Brighton, it's working to some degree. So I don't know, through you, Madam Mayor, if these 3 weekends, whether it be the next one or whatever, I think we're not really taking a serious look, and I'm quite disappointed in that, in regards to making this something which is, like Councillor Savranovsky said, the jewel in our LGA. And at the moment, it's a ghost town in our LGA.
Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just be quite brief. I'll echo the words of my fellow councillors. I think many good points have been made here. I do recognise that we are gathering more data, but I do think we need to be honest with ourselves that in the middle of winter in Brighton, it's not going to be massively busy during the day. I think the fact that it was, that those reflections were made during the middle of summer when Brighton is very busy. I suspect that all the predictions will be right here, unfortunately, and it will be quite empty. But look, we are in a phase where we're gathering data, and as the General Manager said, if we want to have high quality markets there, it does need to be more permanent and be more predictable and regular.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Councillor Douglas.
I just want to commend Bayside staff for taking the brave action of actually doing these trials, and yourself, Madam Mayor, and Steve Camper for pushing these, because I think it's actually really innovative what the council's doing. And I do understand that we're not resourced to put on 3 or 6 big events, but I do also know, having tracked other trial street closures in other states in Australia and also overseas, that often these things do start with a trial. And once you have some data from that trial, then you can use it to apply for state government grants as they become available to do something more at scale. So what this council is doing here is establishing an appetite for doing more. So it's not like we're going to solve this in 1 weekend or 6 weekends. What we're doing is we're signalling to the state government that this is something that we're willing to trial here, that's been done successfully in Melbourne, it's been done successfully across Sydney and other LGAs, and Bayside is taking that initiative. So I really commend the council for what they are doing. I do reiterate, I do agree with my fellow councillors that it would be great if we had invested more into the temporary measures of making these streets attractive for people to come. But I do think it will be very different from January, the February trials. I think in February what we saw is the days were harsh, but the nights were glorious. And we had these beautiful sunsets. The streets were packed. I don't think it was a ghost town. When I was down there, it was packed. There was kids playing, there was bubble making, there was scooters, there was soccer going on, there was restaurants out in the street, people sharing food. I bumped into heaps of friends and neighbours. It was absolutely glorious. And I think what we'll see here in winter, weather permitting, is people coming out during the day and getting the sun, because our homes are colder. We want to sit out in the sun in the middle of the day. So the nights may be much more quiet in winter, but the days hopefully will be busy as we all come together, get out of our homes and get together in Bay Street. So look, I support council staff for what they've been doing, and I really hope that all the councillors get together and get down there and have a coffee, have a pizza, have a Slovakia. The Slovakia shop's closed actually, but the chicken shop's closed. But there's still lots of great restaurants in Bay Street. So please come down and support the bravery of Bayside Council to try something different.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Werner.
Yeah, thanks. I also want to support what other councillors have said, and also I really don't think it was a flop. I think just a personal observation. I really enjoyed the street opening. You know, it was open to pedestrians. It was really a lovely place to visit, and about these kinds of actions, it does take a while for markets and businesses to grow. So I think if it was more of a regular thing, I think more people would also go to that area and enjoy the local businesses, the local restaurants, and so on. So I think I think it is a very brave move, and thank you for taking that action, and let's see how it goes for the next road closures.
Thank you. And councillors, I've just been provided with a list of the businesses that have returned the signed forms. So there's quite a few. There's Dine and Desserts, Omnia, La Piazza, Oporto, Babel Cafe, Bloombar Cafe, La Sandwich, Bayman, Avocado Lounge, and Coco's on the beach. So they're going to be coming out into the roadway. All right, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, this is item 64, matters referred to the Bayside Traffic Committee by the Chair. Moved Councillor McDougall, seconded Councillor Barlow. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to confirm that the 6 Aero Street Brighton Sands matter will be investigated, and the formal item will come up to the Traffic Committee. I see the Director nodding. I just want to say in relation to this matter, and thank you very much for raising this, Madam Mayor. This is an item that I've seen a number of times over the years throughout the LGA, where effectively there's a space between 2 driveways that's too small for a car to park safely and not impact on line of sight, etc. For cars exiting those driveways on either side. This is particularly relevant here because one of the sites is a childcare centre, so it's the last place where you don't want to be able to see as you're driving in and out. But the local resident who lives next door to that childcare centre did raise this twice with council officers, and they were basically told that if you park across a driveway, you get fined. Now, it's, people do this when the space is slightly too small. There's no signage, so they park. I think really as an organisation that is trying to be customer centric and trying to support our community, when people do raise issues like this, I think that the approach should really be say, if we're not going to help, well, why not? Not just say, well, there's something else that can be done here. So I really think every officer at every level of the organisation should really be empowered to take that approach, so that, these things don't have to be, you don't have to approach a councillor when you've done, the exact right thing and gone through all the normal channels to try and get a simple outcome. I mean, they're saying put in a motorbike parking. That's basically to just say don't, it's not suitable for car parking, and there should be signage to reflect that.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Councillors, I'm going to suggest we have a 5-minute recess, so we'll just wait till we're off. Okay, councillors, we're online. We're back now to deal with the notices of motion. So the first notice of motion in front of us is 12.1, and that is the Shorebird Friendly Zone, moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded Councillor Jansen. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Douglas?
So our Shorebird pest. There are 18 species of migratory shorebirds regularly found in Botany Bay due to the diversity of habitat and rich invertebrate foods. Sandringham Foreshore and Dolls Point Beach are intertidal mudflaps and are very important feeding sites for migratory shorebirds, including bar-tailed godwits and resident shorebirds, including the pied oyster catcher. Botany Bay also supports nationally significant populations of the critically endangered eastern curlew and double-banded plover. Bar-tailed godwits migrate to Australia every spring and spend more than 6 months a year here, preparing for their annual migration to their breeding grounds in Siberia and Alaska. The bar-tailed godwits hold the record for the longest non-stop flight of any bird, with 13,560 kilometres continuous flight from Alaska to Australia. Yet some of our shorebirds have declined up to 80% over the last 30 years because of the destruction of their habitats, hunting and disturbance. Migratory shorebirds must feed on coastal mudflats and other wetlands to increase their body mass by up to 70% to gain sufficient energy to sustain them on migration. Disturbances interrupt shorebirds' limited foraging periods during low tide, preventing them from foraging effectively. If they are unable to feed sufficiently, it makes it unlikely they will be able to make the long flight back home. So that's where council can come in, working alongside Georges River Keeper. With shared expertise, we can create protected areas that are like VIP lounges for our feathered friends, for peace, tranquility, for nesting, resting and feeding. So this motion requests that Bayside Council requests that Georges River Keeper provide a shorebird protection plan that acknowledges the different character and capacity of the parts of the river system and bay to accommodate shore and migratory birds. The plan would include advocacy to the state and federal government and actions that council could undertake. These could include signage for educating the community, information on how to help and explaining reinforcing rules, limiting domestic animals on the beach, a fox management program, and engaging with the community to educate them through the council website, social media, beach cleanups, engaging with local schools and on-site community engagement. Creating shorebird-friendly zones will increase the biodiversity of the foreshores and protect migratory shorebird species protected under bilateral international agreements. The community will also benefit by greater connection with the environment, known to enhance people's well-being.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen.
I support this notice of motion because I think for our residents, there are a number of resident groups that are particularly interested in our migratory shorebirds like the Rockdale flock and the Walleye Creek birdo. So it's a real interest area for our community. I think we need to protect this. Also just want to note that we do have another significant shorebird site in Botany Bay, which is the Penryn Estuary, which was kind of decimated by some development. So it'd be good to incorporate that in any shorebird plan that the Georges River Keeper do have or are able to provide. So yeah, I'm very supportive of this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And our rep on the Georges River Keeper will be able to talk to it. Councillor Cedric. Thank you. Any other speakers? No. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. Item 12.2, notice of motion, electric lawn mowers. And just to, I know that the team's been working on this and we're trialling an electric lawn mower actually next week. So which will be, you know, looking at moving that way. I know some of us that were at the national conference last week last year had a good look at some of the options there. So what's available. So we've got a notice of motion here moved Councillor Douglas, seconded Councillor Nargi. Speakers?
So this came about because I recently attended the Smart Energy Conference and came upon an unexpected display I thought that could really benefit council and the community, which is the industrial scale electric ride-on mowers. So they have lots of benefits. They're environmentally friendly. Traditional gas-powered mowers emit harmful pollutants, including carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds. These pollutants contribute to air pollution and climate change, posing a significant threat to our planet and our well-being. By switching to electric motors, we can dramatically reduce our carbon footprint, improve air quality, and protect the environment for future generations. The electric mowers operate more quietly than their diesel-powered counterparts. This is a crucial benefit, particularly for residential areas and parks where noise pollution can be disruptive. It creates a more peaceful and enjoyable environment, both for our workers and the residents that we serve. The electric ride-on mowers also offer economic advantages. Though the initial investment may be slightly higher, the mowers have significantly lower operating costs compared to diesel alternatives. They require less maintenance, have less moving parts, and no need for oil changes or spark plug replacements. As well as that, because we have a power purchase agreement for green energy, we will be fueling them completely from green energy. So in addition to being cost effective, ride-on mowers also provide ergonomic benefits for our workers. They are designed with user comfort in mind, reducing vibrations and noise levels, resulting in more pleasant and safer working environment. Lastly, the electric ride-on mower would send a powerful message to our community. It demonstrates our commitment to sustainability and sets us up as an example for other organisations and individuals to follow suit. By adopting eco-friendly technologies, we inspire positive change and encourage others to take steps towards a greener future. So in conclusion, I think that the electric ride-on mower offers a multitude of benefits to our council, and I hope that we can embrace those opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Any other speakers? Councillor Sunitz.
I love supporting this. This is terrific, but there's no spark plugs in diesel engines. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I was going to suggest maybe to the Director of City Presentation, we extend this beyond just the lawnmowers, the edges, the blowers, all those things that currently just bring out that toxic fume into the neighbourhood. I know it as a longer overarching position, we are heading in that direction, but the sooner the better with the smaller ones, low cost, the blowers, the edges, whatever we use, it's small. The technology has now improved tremendously in the past few years. And I was going to suggest also that we have third-party contractors that do it all. I was watching them mow the lawn the other day with a little remote control thing. If we go down that pathway of totally electric, we need to speak to the contractors that we get on board that are also electric, so they're compliant with our policies. So it's a bit of a process, but I'm sure with a bit of diligence we can get there. Thank you.
Councillor Jansen.
Through you, Mayor, can I just request that all that the GM asks for references in all future notices of motion that have data in them, because I like to kind of look at those sources as well. So that was one thing. And I note that our community strategic plan talks about a key objective being a renewal in emissions. So I'm just wondering if we do, I imagine we do have a broader fleet or equipment renewal plan for the future. So as our equipment dates or whatever, we are replacing it with other more efficient options. Is that the case through you, Mayor?
You want to take it or? Mr. Clissold, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Council's fleet is always looking at emissions and standards and alternative types of hybrid equipment, electric equipment, etc. And yes, it's in the policy to try and get our emissions down to zero as soon as possible.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, this looks like an absolutely great proposal. And I was just interested, so just said the return happens around the 800 to 900 hour mark. I was just interested how many hours a week on average does a mile run at council currently?
The majority of the majority of our mowers in per team are doing about 33 hours a week.
Thank you. No further discussion?
I just wondered if Councillor Souness wanted me to actually add to the motion that from diesel to electric, and that council also investigate the transition for other tools to similarly be.
I guess what you want to keep in mind here is obviously the time it's going to take. So if we're focused on one thing first, and we focus on the getting a report to council quicker, which focuses on the ride-on mowers, which are being trialled anyway. So we'll have a bit more, and then maybe we can then incorporate that doesn't necessarily, the rest doesn't have to come in the same report, otherwise that delays the first report, but we can put it in that additional investigation take place on all, what's it called? Minor and major plant. Perhaps. All right. No other speakers. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right. 12.3 notice of motion restricting advertising on council-owned sites. Do I have a mover? Yep. Moved, Councillor Werner. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so Bayside Council is currently in the process of looking at bus shelter advertising and negotiating with companies. So this is actually a great opportunity to consider our advertising policies. Council has the right to decide what appears on our property and which companies it has sponsorship agreements with. We already ban tobacco, gambling and alcohol promotions, and we can write rules into the advertising contracts that determine what ads can appear. To regulate sponsorship partnerships, we can add the words fossil fuels to the lists of prohibited products in our current policy. The Fossil Ad Ban Group says that as community alarm about global warming increases, coal, petrol and methane gas companies are also under pressure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But instead of changing their businesses, they have fought to protect their profits through public relations, marketing and sponsorships. This has also been recognised by the IPCC. Of Australia's top greenhouse gas polluters, the biggest advertisers are AGL, Ampol, Energy Australia and Origin Energy. Using publicly available data, they estimate that the top 5 spenders conservatively invested $238 million on social licence and influence in the 2020 to 2021 financial year. Fossil fuel corporations rarely talk about their products. Instead, greenwashing occurs, and it's defined as the act or practice of making a product, policy, activity, etc. appear to be more environmentally friendly or less environmentally damaging than it really is. Research in the Journal of European Consumer and Market Law warns about the pernicious effects of fossil fuel companies' greenwash advertising that misguides the public and makes it harder to hold them accountable for their damaging activities. BP, for example, has been criticised for using ads to promote its renewable energy projects, which only make up 4% of its total investments, while 96% remains in oil and gas. Numerous companies have faced overseas courts or advertising regulators for greenwashing. In Australia, Santos is being sued for claiming that gas is clean in its annual report. but Australia's ad regulator has only upheld one case on environmental grounds. Australia is behind the rest of the world when it comes to stopping greenwashing. And this is from the Fossil Ad Ban website. Now, Bayside Council has the opportunity of stopping this greenwashing from occurring on our council property and advertising assets. And there are actually a number of other councils and governments that have gone this way. In New South Wales, Winge Caribee has a fossil fuel sponsorship ban. City of Sydney, Inner West Council, Byron, Lane Cove have banned fossil fuel ads. And in Victoria, Yarra Council, Marybeck, Darebin and Maribyrnong have resolved to ban fossil fuel ads. Other Australian councils include Fremantle, Glen Eira, Waratah, Wynyard. Health experts are telling us that the health effects of fossil fuels are dangerous for a number of reasons, and the biggest one being the increased natural disasters associated with climate change. So let's end dangerous greenwashing in Bayside, and I hope you support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Souness.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we have a list of these greenwashing organisations? I don't know, but just a few came to mind. Qantas, its main consumable is aviation fuel, right? And I was just thinking aloud. So how do the Green senators get to Canberra? Do they walk or catch the plane? They must catch the plane. Oh, well, not everyone's got an electric car. I noticed not many electric cars downstairs tonight. Ampol, BP, Shell, some of the companies that are on this list. Okay, they extract fossil fuel, they sell fossil fuel, but this is the future. These are the future locations of vehicle charging stations. We're not going to create enemies of the people who are going to help us into the future. So I don't understand. There's a lot of thought to go behind this. If people sit in their little enclosures in inner Sydney, in the West Council and so on, and think about how to rubbish organisations that have supported our economy for years and years and years, especially coal and gas, which has provided tremendous revenue for us, so be it. We've had the Indian Prime Minister came there. I'm diverting from the thing. The Indian Prime Minister came the other day, and we're happy to sell him coal, but we're not allowed to use it. I don't understand it. There's no black band brought out by the Greens jumping up and down and saying, don't sell it to India. But that's okay. If there's a list, let's explore that list. But I find it very hard to talk to the people that will come to our request for advertising on bus shelters and say specifically you can't have this, this, and this. Because I'm sure there's a lot of companies, Westside. There's so many companies, Santos, that do other things, great things, but also have a fuel mix or a coal or an oil or some mix in their portfolio somewhere. It's a very complicated issue, and we don't need to put people offside, especially when we're looking for revenue streams. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. Any other speakers?
I'd just like to move a foreshadowed motion that this item is just received and noted. I feel the council is so busy at the moment, they really cannot keep looking at things that aren't really local government, state issues. Councillor Souness has mentioned big companies, so we are looking at a revenue stream, and I don't think how many people in Bayside would know that company use fossil fuels. So I'm just saying the foreshadow motion is the item is received and noted.
Seconder for Councillor Barlow. Seconded. Okay, so we'll deal with the first item, which is the motion. Deal with that first. Are there any other speakers to the first motion? Councillor Hannah?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I understand the sentiment behind this, and I'm not necessarily wedded to a position against it. I really do understand the sentiment behind it, and I can understand Councillor Werner, trying to push us in the right direction with this stuff. But I don't want to see this council become gun-shy about this advertising in particular, because we can determine on a merit-by-merit basis who we enter into these arrangements with. And I just want to remind the council tonight that on the 28th of September last year, I moved a notice of motion and it was passed unanimously. I didn't call for a division, but it went through unanimously on the voices. And it was actually seconded by the Emeritus Mayor that's sitting here tonight, right? And what that was attempting to do was to get this council to really start to think about its capacity to increase the revenue from advertising. Now, that report, we called for that report. That report hasn't yet come back to council. We are getting bits and pieces, but this was an all-embracing notice of motion. So I'm not against what Councillor Werner's trying to do here, but I don't want to restrict this council in really looking at everything that we've got available to us for the purposes of bringing in advertising revenue. And this notice of motion back in September talked about fleet, not just buildings, fleet, park benches, etc. And that etc. is a root and branch review. I'm talking about going down to the pens. I'm talking about the general manager when she goes out for lunch having a sandwich board on. We should be looking at everything that moves and doesn't move. And I've got to say, Madam Mayor, I've got to say that I'm somewhat disappointed because I did mention the example on the night of Council's mattress truck. Now, Council's mattress truck is still running around. It used to have Bayside Council on it. It hasn't even got that on it now. It hasn't even got identification on it.
Well, you'll be pleased, Councillor Hannah, to know that new truck signage is just currently with the art. I've seen a draft. So all our trucks are going to have new artwork, which is encouraging people to sign up to our e-news to keep people engaged. And we're going to, while I'm on signage, I'll just let you know that on the billboards at the airport where we have an option to place things at no cost, we're going to be putting Welcome to Bayside, the international gateway to Sydney.
Fabulous. It's great self-promotion and I'm not against it, but I'm looking at paid advertising. So whatever we do, don't take up all the room, because those trucks that are going around at the moment for the cleanups, they are completely vacant.
Okay.
So there's plenty of room for our advertising, self-promotion, but by gee, we can get some other advertising and get that revenue in, because that mattress truck's going around everywhere and they do a great job. So I'm not against this, but I don't want to nobble this council. I'm trying to get considered risk-taking, right? Considered risk-taking. We've got to think outside the square. We've got to increase that revenue stream. As far as who we let on and off, that can be done on a merit-by-merit basis. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. Are there any other speakers?
I just want to explain why I supported this motion. I'm going to read an article here from a doctor, Richard Yin, who's a Perth GP. Like tobacco, the health consequences of fossil fuel combustion are already well documented. These are either directly from air pollution or indirectly mediated through climate change impacts at just over 1 degree Celsius of warming thus far. Deaths due to air pollution from fossil fuel combustion are estimated to be 8 million annually, or around 1 in 5 deaths globally. In Australia, an estimated 2,600 people die prematurely each year from anthropogenic air pollution. These deaths largely relate to increased cardiovascular and respiratory mortality in relation to fine particulate matter. A recent study estimates that between 2000 and 2019, more than 5 million annual premature deaths were attributed to warming climate. Global deaths due to weather-related disasters have been approximately 2 million in the past 50 years, with climate change driving more frequent events. As the recent floods in Pakistan have shown, the impacts of such events are not just on mortality, but widespread disruption to housing, agriculture and infrastructure, with those most marginalised being most at risk. In Australia in 2022, we have seen how floods in Queensland and New South Wales have profound social impacts, with tens of thousands of people having been evacuated, homes destroyed, and communities now facing years of rebuilding. Climate change can also have profound impacts on healthcare delivery and access. As the 2019 to 2020 bushfires in Australia demonstrated, health systems subject to natural disasters can be overwhelmed with disruption to power, transport, and communications. We banned tobacco advertising because of the harm it caused. The number of people dying from fossil fuel combustion is at least comparable to the current worldwide smoking-related deaths of 8 million annually. Deaths would be higher without tobacco advertising ban. We need to rapidly shift cultural attitudes to transition to a decarbonised economy now. This means we must consider all measures, including banning the marketing of fossil fuels. The fossil fuel industry, like the tobacco industry, is incapable of self-regulation.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay.
You have to sit down, Councillor Douglas, when a point of order.
sorry.
Councillor Werner, when
I didn't know
a
you were
point
chair.
of,
Yeah,
let me just
thank you.
explain for the newer councillors, a point of order can be called by a councillor at any point in time. The speaker then has to sit down, and the councillor that called the point of order then puts forward the reason why, and then it's determined whether it's accepted or not. Please go ahead, Councillor Souness.
Madam Chair, the point of order is that it was mentioned just now that tobacco was banned. It was banned by higher authority than councils, whether it was state, federal, and that was mentioned by Councillor Barlow as well, that we're not here to determine state mandated legislation. Fossil fuels and the stop of usage of them is again a state mandated requirement, or it could be federal. We're not here to determine that today if we're going to stop. No one here's put up their hand and said, let's stop petrol burning diesel / cars. No one's saying that. We can't go down that pathway. We can have a conversation about stopping the advertising, but not about actually the legislation that's surrounding it, because it's not in our area of control.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. So, Councillor Douglas, if you just stick to any further point that you want to make in relation to the motion in front of us, please.
Yeah, okay, I hear you, Councillor Souness, that we don't have legislative...
Can you please address the chair?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I do hear, Councillor Souness, that we don't have legislative control over the banning of all fossil fuels advertising in Australia, as we are just one local government council. However, we have heard tonight that at least 10 other councils in Australia have already taken this step. I personally would feel ill if I knew that Bayside Council was accepting money from fossil fuel companies. I am very worried about my children's future. I have been since the IPCC report was released in 2018, showing the very, very real risk that we are already experiencing rapidly and more to come because of dangerous climate change. If we do not take our position as leaders in this society seriously by addressing these issues on a local level, we can't expect anything to change. Things have to change locally as well as globally. We have to take responsibility here and now, and not just rescind the responsibility to other people.
Okay, thank you. That's not necessary from the chamber. Okay, no further speakers. We have the right of reply.
Thank you. So this isn't banning people from, using their cars and things like that. This is simply against us taking money from fossil fuel advertising. And as we've just heard, it's killing more people than tobacco. Now, both Labor and Liberal receive donations from fossil fuels. And so I am very concerned that this will not be addressed at the federal and state level.
Point of order, please be seated. Point of order has been called.
It gets waived in terms of the advertising, but when you make a statement about Labor and Liberal accepting donations, that is not right. Because according to the Sydney Morning Herald, March 13th, federal Greens will keep $76,000 in donations from fossil fuel investors. So let's pay even more. There it is. See it? Okay. Now let's be fair. Now, my point of order is, what's it got to do with the notice of motion?
Thank you, Councillor Saranowski. Please stick to the notice of motion in your response.
Yeah, so what this has got to do with the notice of motion is that I'm concerned that this will not be addressed by the federal and the state government, and that's why it's really up to us to do this now. We can decide what gets advertised on our assets. This is definitely within what we are able to do. So, and I think it shouldn't be decided on an ad hoc case-by-case basis, as Councillor Hannah has suggested, because that's even more complicated. If we just have a very simple policy that has the word fossil fuels in it, that we don't use, that we don't allow advertising from companies that produce fossil fuels, then that is a much, much simpler policy to follow than just case by case and ad hoc. So I actually think that this is a much easier way to ensure that we are actually preventing something that is harmful to our residents.
Thank you. We have a motion in front of us, so we're dealing with the original motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare the motion lost. Councillor Barlow, do you wish to withdraw your foreshadow? One moment, please. Do you wish to withdraw your foreshadowed? The motion was lost. Okay, the foreshadowed motion has been rescinded. We certainly can have a division. That's the only one we're dealing with. So this is, it's the original motion, so whether you're for or against, Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Mascot, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Nagy, Councillor Saranowski, Councillor Souness, Councillor Werner, Councillor Wada, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Hannah, Councillor Douglas, Councillor McDougall, Councillor Cedrak. I'm against. Thank you. All right, that takes us to, and I'm just conscious, councillors, it's already 10:10, so in relation to the rest of the motions, please don't repeat what's been said before, so that we don't go too late tonight. All right, 12.4, notice of motion, affordable public housing. So we have a motion in front of us. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Werner, seconded Councillor Douglas. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So according to Council's Delivery Program and Operational Plan 2023 to 2024, 35.9% of households are in rental stress and 23.1% are in mortgage stress. Now, it doesn't say the percentage of what, but in any case, it's a very, very large proportion of our residents who are suffering in the current housing crisis. Now, there is also a significant reduction in available public housing stock between 2016 and 2021. We lost 300 public housing dwellings in the Randwick LGA. We lost 292 in the Bayside LGA and 845 in the City of Sydney, according to the census of 2021. As of June 2022, there were 51,031 applicants listed on the New South Wales Housing Register, with an additional 6,519 on the priority list. And yet there is a waiting time of more than 10 years for public housing in the St George region. The item about redevelopment of Henry Kendall Crescent and Mascot at the last Planning and Environment Committee, which we actually spoke about today, has highlighted the problem of privatisation of public land. If this does not stop, there will be a continued reduction in the amount of public land that is available for public housing. As we've seen in Eden Street, Arncliffe, public housing estates that are still structurally sound and with long-standing communities are sold to the highest bidder and aggressively redeveloped. While some projects keep the same amount of dwellings, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments are being replaced with 1 bedroom or studio apartments, and so the number of people able to be accommodated goes down. At the last election, Labor promised to stop privatisation and committed to immediately end the sale of public housing in New South Wales and to place a moratorium on privatisation of public housing, including the sale, outsourcing or leasing of any public housing assets or services. Instead of this model of development, the Labor state government should stand by their promises and make sure that no public land is privatised. Public housing estates should be renovated instead of being knocked down. In cases where an estate is in need of complete redevelopment, 100% of the resulting housing should be publicly owned so that we can make sure enough housing is available for the most vulnerable. So I urge you to support this motion to call on the New South Wales State Government to immediately institute a ban and reversal on all public housing sell-offs, including loss of public land through redevelopment of Land and Housing Corporation sites, such as the estates at Henry, Kendall, Crescent and Mascot, to invest in building more public housing, to retain all current public housing stock as public housing, to ban no grounds evictions and forced relocations, to ensure security of tenure for housing tenants, to ensure prompt maintenance and repair of public housing, no more demolition by neglect, and to protect long-standing communities. Thank you.
Councillor
Madam Mayor,
Zaranowski.
I rise to oppose this and foreshadow an amendment. Thank you, Governor, for your really. Yeah, okay. I have no issues with providing public housing. It's a critical issue. Excuse me, do you want to speak to me after the meeting? Okay, we'll go outside.
Please be respectful. This is a public chamber, and I've asked you once already, Mr. Garnett. Please sit in the chamber quietly. It is not a public chamber for you to be speaking, okay? So sit there and listen quietly, or please leave. You make the choice. Please make a choice.
I feel strongly about public housing. There should be a need of public housing. But the notice of motion reminds me of a young Labor when we used to move motions. Now, if you go through the motion, the notice of motion, it's really a Greens motion. It's a Greens motion because the Labor Party, the Minns government, has put a hold on any sale of any public asset. They've already done that. They've already done it. They've stopped it. In the notice of motion, it refers to Eden Street, Arcliffe. Well, guess what? The previous government's already sold it. So how can this be applicable when we're writing to the government to stop a sale that's already happened? The Premier's already made an announcement in terms of the rental crisis. It's not his jurisdiction to put limits on increases on rent. I'm concerned about the increase of rent that's occurred right across Sydney. But it's not in our jurisdictions to call on the government to do things they can't do. Just for some interest, 4,858 homes were sold by the previous government in the last 12 years. The suburb of Ayres has virtually been sold off. That was a public housing on it. The Minister, Rose Jackson, is looking at potential sites for public housing. They don't need these notice of motions to come up in relation to the crisis in terms of public housing. The Premier has instructed all these government ministers to look for surplus lands to provide public housing on it. Now, the only way this is a meaningful to go forward is that we should write to the Minister and the Premier and congratulate him. The Council congratulates Premier Minns and the New South Wales Government on their swift action to freeze the sale of all public and social housing in New South Wales. That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be calling on the government demanding things of election promises. They're already doing it. They're already doing it. They've put a freeze on any sale of public assets. They've asked, Minister Jackson has asked the department to look at vacant office spaces where they can be converted into residential usages. Now, one thing I've learned, in my 40 years in local government, and that is we should always be working with the government, not demanding things. We should always be working with it. The government today has already proven by placing a ban. And they've asked, also what you'll find, I'm sure, on the North Shore areas, that you'll see a lot more development there, because in the past, we're the ones copping it on the south. If you look at what's happening around Bankstown, even look at Mascot, so we can reach the target of the housing. But the critical issue is we should be working with the government and congratulating them on putting a stop on the sale, and how we can work with them on any public land that is not usable. We've already gone into the sale across the road here, the Altitude building. That's been sold to a government-private partnership, I'm not sure what the setup was, for public housing. Now, I'm sure we all got something late last year. But the thing is that this council should be working with the government. It is a very serious matter, and not on putting up a notice of motion that, like Councillor Butler said on the previous one, 3/4 of these items, we've got no control. The government can't restrict or control rent increases. They can't, or the evictions, because at the same time the landlords have rights. But I'm conscious of trying to do something that's doable, than rather make motherhood statements and do nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Nowinowski. Do I have a seconder to the foreshadowed motion? Councillor Souness. Just one moment. I think if we I think Councillor Saranowski said freeze all sale of public and social housing in New South Wales.
There's no social, it's for public. That's the senior social housing in New South Wales.
Okay. So at the moment, so we have a foreshadowed motion, but we have the original motion which we will deal with at the moment. So are there any more speakers to the original motion?
Can I just throw a few more ideas? And it really concerns me that we're dealing with the Greens think tank here for the past few months in thrashing out all these items which are not to our jurisdiction. I don't mind, we can talk about it, can have a conversation. At the end of the day, if we're sending letters to state governments, state government ministries, talking about this and talking about that, they're going to say to us, well, what's wrong with these people at Bayside? Are they okay? So just to go back to a few elements that we're talking about, we want to increase the total stock of affordable housing in inverted commas. Well, it's not our job either. I've been listening to the things we've been talking about over the past few months. The market determines that. The market will determine that. Anyone who's done fundamental economics will work it out, that the market will drive the rental prices and it will drive the stock, the availability of rental properties. And if we want more, we can have more. State government revenue is very limited. GST, land tax, stamp duty and payroll tax. Who wants all that increase so we can have more affordable housing? It's a big conversation to have. A lot of people will say, well, hang on a minute. If someone wants to live in Sans Souci where the property costs $500, or they can go to Aids where it costs $400. We can't be the driving factor of the market economy. And it's disappointing that we're having to deal with this tonight and constantly meeting by meeting, Councillor Mascot, meeting by meeting, and talking about things which are outside our jurisdiction. I'm happy to have these conversations at an information session. We could flesh it out, but to bring it here and to flog a horse that's pretty much dead, it's a real disappointment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. So we're dealing with any other speakers to the original motion.
Look, all I want to make the comment is that obviously the motion was written before all of this extra, the Premier came out and the Minister saying that we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Now,
If I can just say, the paper wasn't published till Friday, so that came out before, so the
but it's
motion could have
written,
been
yeah, It
withdrawn.
could have been withdrawn, but, you know, Eden Street was a classic in our area, and hopefully Kendall Street doesn't become that way. And it was 740 units, and they only offered us another 40 social housing. So, and there's a very big difference between social and affordable, and it's really hard to explain to anyone, but I believe that, you know, the government of the day now is looking further than what the other government were doing. They were just selling anything and everything to try and balance their books. It didn't matter what it was, they were selling it. So I feel the motion is actually redundant now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Douglas.
I just want to briefly explain why I seconded this motion. It's because I think in essence, we've all agreed that we support affordable and social housing in Bayside. And I would love us to have a comprehensive discussion about how we can bring that forward. I've met with the Housing Minister, Rose Jackson, before she got elected. She actually lives here in Rockdale. She's a fantastic person. I have great confidence that she will create more social housing across New South Wales. I'm speaking as a non-partisan person. I'm not aligned to the Greens. I'm not aligned to Labor or any major party. I just think this is a very important issue that we've talked about, that we want to support more affordable housing, more social and public housing. And I really urge Bayside Council for us to come forward a way together cohesively where we can do something to enact our desire to actually create more social, affordable and public housing in Bayside.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. It's important for me here to reiterate the work that this council is doing for affordable and social housing, putting up a motion of work that we are already doing. We have a working property group where we are looking at assets, we're looking at opportunities for affordability, we're negotiating in developments through VPAs to get affordable housing. There is so much we are already doing. This, you know, it's all in the pipeline, it's all happening. We are all committed to affordable housing. We don't need to write to anyone, we don't need to do anything. We need to just get on with the role that we play in this, supported by the overarching state government, which has released a number of announcements about freezing the sale of assets, by also investigating the rental prices and tenancy and all those things. All this is happening. So I don't go out there and say we're not, this makes us do something, because we are working very hard. The staff are working very hard. We've got a clear direction, and we don't need any more motions. We're doing all the work that we need to do in relation to affordable housing at this point in time. So are there any other speakers before there's a right of reply? No. First motion, would you like a right of reply?
Yes, please. Look, first of all, to that, I say, are we really doing as much as we can? Because we've been selling off land. That could be social
Point of
housing.
order.
Point of order. Please be seated, Councillor Werner.
To make a blanket statement that we're selling off public land is quite an irresponsible thing to say in a public environment. We have a strategy to realise highest and best use for community assets. All of the assets that are owned by Bayside are not owned by Bayside, they're owned by the Bayside community. And to say we're selling assets off is completely out of context and out of line. And I ask you to withdraw that. You voted.
Please sit down until he's finished.
We talked tonight and passed a motion to realise the value of an asset that is run down beyond its reasonable life and worth quite a significant amount of money. The funds for that will be redirected into the things that we're talking about tonight. So there's an overarching strategy here that all councillors are on board with. Everyone's invited to the working group that we talk about. There's confidential items in there, but we're working, that group is to get highest and best use out of all property assets, assets that are owned by the Bayside community. So to make blatant off-the-cuff statements that we're selling off things is completely out of line. And I ask you to withdraw that, please.
Councillor Werner, you've been asked to withdraw. Will
I'm
you
not going to
that
withdraw it. I'm
statement?
not going to withdraw it because we have done it. And can I just say, highest and best use is a technical term that means the biggest financial value. When you're looking at financial value, it actually means dollars. It doesn't actually take into account social value. It doesn't take into account even economic value, like what people can do with that. It doesn't take into account environmental value.
Point of order.
Highest and
Point
best
of order has
use.
been called. Please sit down. That is the code of conduct requirement, Councillor
I'm really
Werner.
disappointed that Councillor Werner has not withdrawn that statement. So I challenge her to name all these assets that we have publicly sold during her term on council.
Thank you. Would you like to name them or withdraw?
Yeah, well, there was one on that we actually talked about today at Hollingwood Street, number 5. So that we have sold, like it was, we can look at the minutes and it actually says it in the minutes. So, and there are other examples too. So I will take that on notice.
Madam Mayor, I asked that there should be censored, Councillor Werner, because she made a statement that we were selling off properties when in actual fact we're not. We are not selling assets, other than the one property tonight that we voted for.
Which is not housing.
Which is not housing strategy, it's an industrial property. So I don't know what to say. I can get up on here and make outrageous statements on it. I asked her again through you to withdraw that statement when it's not actually correct. We are not selling assets at all.
Thank you, Councillor. You've been asked again to withdraw this.
I won't withdraw it because
Stand up,
I
please, when
actually
you're addressing council.
I'm not going to withdraw that, but I just want to continue with my right of reply because we are here to represent
You've been
our
asked,
residents.
Councillor Werner, you've been asked to withdraw the motion. I'm going to put the, unless you're prepared to withdraw a statement which is totally incorrect when you've been asked to do so by 2 fellow councillors, I'm going to end the time now and put the motion. So you have a choice. You have a choice. You withdraw the motion, or I put it. You withdraw the statement you made, or I put the motion.
Okay, can I just finish
The
my
choice,
right of reply?
The choice is yours. Withdraw it, or I put the motion.
I'm not withdrawing.
Okay, I put the motion. All right, so we've got the motion in front of us, which is yes, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. The motion that's in front of us. All those in favour say aye. Oh, we have to vote on the motion to put the motion. All right, we'll vote to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, now we'll deal with the motion in front of us. And all those in favour say aye. Against, I declare that lost. All right, that then takes us to the foreshadowed motion. So we have a foreshadowed motion. Councillor Saranowski.
Madam Mayor, I have been here for 40 years. I have never seen what's just happened now when someone's made a statement that it's not true and they've withdrawn it. I say again, in moving that notice of motion, and to the residents that are watching this on Bayside Council, we are not selling any assets other than one tonight, which is a
Small industrial
thing that has got no community benefit. I respect every other councillor here on it, but when someone makes a statement that we are selling public assets is not correct. And I say again, for you to councillor, please name 4 or 5 properties that we have sold in the last 2 years that we've been here. I'll cut it down. Name 3.
2.
Or 2.
Can I just ask a question? I mean, there was mentioned tonight that there is we are on the assets working group that we
So
are.
are you speaking to the foreshadowed motion?
Yeah,
'Cause
I'm
that's what we're
asking
dealing
a
with.
question around the foreshadowed motion because it's been mentioned tonight that we have a strategy around affordable housing. Are we referring to that taking action on affordable housing across Bayside LGA? Is that the strategy that we're referring to?
If that's what it's called, I'm not sure the correct name. Oh, not taking action, but what we've got the work we're doing on a.
It's an affordable housing policy.
So it's
So
the policy
the
we've got.
public can research our affordable housing policy. It's on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other speakers to the foreshadowed motion? No right of reply? No. All right, I put the foreshadowed motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, I declare it carried. Thank you. That takes us to item 12.5, notice. Yes. 12.5, notice of motion, accessibility to Cenotaphs. Moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Mascot. Any speakers? Councillor Mascot?
Well, thank you. Through the chair, I support this notion based on the fact that due to our ageing population of veterans and not disrespecting the ritual layouts of the cenotaphs that we have in our Bayside area, but we do need to consider accessibility for any of those veterans and community members that are wheelchair bound or walkers or walking sticks, that we have a look at how our cenotaphs are laid out so that they can participate in the annual and all other activities that are celebrated, like Remembrance Day and the veterans and things, World War II, Vietnam, the Middle East, that it's accessible to everyone and in a safe environment that they can come and pay their respect.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Any other speakers?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, it was very evident at the two ceremonies and in Mascot and Botany that there were some accessibility issues. So it's pleasing to see that the General Manager's comments there that these are now recognised and are being investigated. I think the support for these ceremonies and the attendance on site is increasing. It's also increasing as we have an ageing population, so it's something we really do need to investigate. Thank you.
To ask a question, yes, I do know the site at Memorial Park. Is that Mascot? Yeah. Is this only the public memorials, the ones in our... So my suggestion is that you try and sort out funding from the RSL, because I think could be funding there.
There's a grant from the which
and it's only
Veterans Fund.
It's not the RSLs. It's only the ones on public land.
Yeah, like the ones in our parks.
Yeah. Okay. But I know there's grant funding from the RSL on occasion, so that'd be great.
there is, and council will apply for it. I might just, Councillor Jansen, we might just add that council ensures, if you're happy, that appropriate safety standards are in place at each location by Anzac Day 2024. So just to make sure that we're safe for next year. All right, no other speakers. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. 12.6, notice of motion. Old Botany Police Station, transfer of ownership and community use. Moved Councillor Morrissey, seconded Councillor Jansen. Would you like to speak?
Only very quickly, this builds on previous motions that I've brought to council. The Old Botany Police Station is owned by New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation, who developed the broader site quite a number of years ago. Guess what? For social housing. And this is effectively a leftover building that's on our local heritage register. But New South Wales Land and Housing Corp until this point are just leaving the building vacant and letting it become very, very run down. We cannot get state heritage register listing because it is not actually that unique. There's about 110, but it is unique in Bayside and we should be proud of it. So this motion seeks to contact the member for Maroubra and also the new ministers to keep momentum and seek to have this property transferred to Bayside ownership, Bayside community ownership, after it's been fixed up, of course. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, I also am supportive of this notice of of this notice of motion, as the Botany Historical Trust have been advocating for this for some time now. There is immense community interest in this site. There are a number of residents that would like to see this available for community usage. So I think this is an important motion, so I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Councillor Saranos.
Madam Mayor, a few years ago, I moved a notice of motion. Can we also write to the honourable member for Heffron? He's shown us great interest in terms of trying to preserve this wonderful building. And I concur what Councillor Morris here said. It'd be good if the government brings it to a standard that we can use for community facilities, because regrettably, again, I don't want to be political, the previous government just neglected the building and it was slowly deteriorating to be in a position where you can't actually fix it. So, for the grace of God, we have a Labor government elected.
Starting to sound like Mr. Albanese.
Yeah, we have a Labor government, which, and I know that, as I said, the member for Heffron has taken an active role on social media in terms of this property. It has actually got an unbelievable history of this site, and it's very important that we do whatever we can to get the ownership. And now that we've got a sympathetic government and ministers in our area, that we would stand a better chance than before and to preserve this wonderful building and to make it available for a number of community organisations. Because what I found around that area, there's been so much development, there's no meeting place. I like the word, using the word today, meeting place. So it'll be a great opportunity for the youth of the area to get together. Maybe we get the council to take over the building, or working with the Botany Historical Trust. But that building needs to be saved, and it needs to be given to us, back to the community. It reminds me of down at Peter DePina Reserve. I'm losing my memory. The Primrose House.
Yeah.
Primrose House is a beautiful building, and fortunately, again, I've got to praise the member for Rockdale. If it wasn't his intervention, that building would have been sold to private enterprise. And because he constantly harassed the Minister of the day, they actually sold it to a lower priced bidder. And it was important that building remain in, okay, admittedly it's a private school, but you can see today the fruits of the ownership is that they've maintained the existing building. And that's what this building at Botany, with the right people behind it and the backing of this council, will be a perfect opportunity to restore it to its glory days. But that whole strip has got a heritage listing. That's why I can't believe the building next door or the building after that doesn't blend in with the streetscape. So it's important that we do whatever we can, and that's why the Honourable the member for Heffron is passionate about it, and with his support and the Honourable Michael Daly, the Attorney General, to get behind this and speak to the Minister for Police. Maybe we could write to the Minister of Police and ask them for a complete review and to renovate it and to give it to us, the Bayside community, for $1 rent or something, peppercorn rent.
Okay. It's thank you, Councillor Saranowski. That's a good ad. It's the Land and Housing that actually own the site. Yeah. So we can say the relevant ministers. Yeah. Up the top.
Yeah. Just that I'm glad to say that we're going to try and get it refurbished first.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we've got Wilson's Cottage. That became a heritage grant. So there could be avenues that I think it's a bit more major than what poor old Wilson's Cottage was. That, it is demolition by neglect, but that's what people treat old buildings. They don't want it, they just demolish it by neglect.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor
Yeah, I'm
Hannah?
fully supportive of this. I'm a big fan of adaptive reuse. I used to work in a building in the city, the old Metropolitan Waters and Sewage Drainage Board building that's in Pitt Street, and that was heritage listed. When it was built, it was actually the most expensive public building in New South Wales. It was £354,000 and it's Art Deco, and it was sold to a hotel group, and it was transformed into the Primus Hotel. I think it's since changed hands, but it's a magnificent thing. And adaptive reuse, I mean, I don't think we should limit ourselves necessarily just to entirely community use either. There might be an ability to have some sort of commercial component, like a little coffee shop or something like that. And I'd love to see perhaps a couple of the cells fully restored and lockable, perhaps for the purposes of sin binning recalcitrant councillors, or, you know, things along those lines, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hannah. All right, I put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. 12.7, notice of motion, code of meeting practice amendment to order of business to recognise condolences. Moved, councillor Barlow, seconded.
I'll just be very quick. I'm hoping everyone would support this. It's basically most councils do it this way, so I was hoping that this could go onto the agenda item as a permanent thing in the agenda, and so that it then becomes. Sorry? No, but they'd have to be very significant people, like the two tonight, that have done a lot, and that's what it's usually about.
Yeah, and you know, we do recognise them, like, you know, if they come to us, we have done that. Any speakers to the motion? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, next is questions with notice. So I assume councillors have submitted their questions with notice and we've got them on the screens. Excellent. All right, that's good. Then we'll move to move questions with no. We move questions with no. I can't remember. No. It's getting late. All right, number 14. So this is a confidential report matter. However, there was an updated motion that was circulated by the GM for this. We can accept, we can put that motion, but if anyone wants to discuss it further, then we would have to go into confidential. So is there any people?
Can we have the new motion in front of us?
Yeah, we can. All right, so basically, so the first ones that this report be held, that council receives and notes the information contained in the report. The council notes that clause 5.2 of the agreement for licence and lease includes the right for either council or a HEPA to rescind the AFL from 21st of May. So that's just noting that. Excuse me. The council also notes that following refusal of a HEPA's DA by the Bayside Planning Panel, the AFL mandates that council and a HEPA discuss in good faith whether the DA works can be varied. That council at the moment is attempting to convene a meeting for this purpose, and the content of such discussion or a HEPA's failure to meet with council in a timely fashion for such discussion will be one consideration for council to take into account if it wishes to consider whether to rescind the AFL. That should a future decision be made by either party to rescind, council will need to consider options for the use of 72 Laycock Street. So basically, we're just in a holding pattern till due process is undertaken as part of the agreement. So does anyone want to go into confidential, or are you happy with that? As long as it doesn't go into anything that would be confidential in nature or the legal.
Works can be varied. What does that mean? So is it a new DA? Is it adjustment of something?
Through the Mayor, the AFL doesn't go into any great detail about what that means, but as we understand the intent, This, of course, covered all scenarios from whether or not there was one ground for refusal or multiple grounds for refusal. The intent here is to have a discussion in good faith as to whether the likelihood of a modification or an amendment could be made that would allow for a reconsideration or a resubmission of a DA. So basically a modification that would be acceptable. We don't, when this was written, there was no DA to tie it to. So it really is, it just opens up the opportunity for a discussion to go back to the points that the panel have raised and to see whether there is any possibility that an amendment or amendments could be made that would allow the DA to be modified and reconsidered.
Thank you. So I guess because the meeting has to take place, you know, within the next, ideally within the next, 2 weeks. So then let that meeting take place, and then council will come with a future report. Yeah, that then details the next steps for council to consider. So everyone comfortable? All right, then we'll put the motion as it is before us. We need a mover. Move Councillor Saranowski, second. Councillor McDougall. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. I declare the meeting closed at 10:47 p.m.